Okay, we're going to begin this evening's meeting. Roll call, myself, Bob Carlson, I'm the first selectman. Also with me is Selectwoman Nicole Porter and Selectman Brett Mastriani. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. It's always so much nicer when we have more people saying it. Usually there's 3 people plus us, so that was great. Do we have any public comment on non-agenda items? That's on non-agenda items. Public comment? Seeing none. And as you know, during the meeting, when we're discussing agenda items, after the selectmen speak about it, we do open up a public comment, especially if we're going to take a vote that evening. Any comment by either of the 2 selectmen? Nicole, Brett? Nope. Okay, and after to keep the meeting a little bit shorter this evening, which it's a full agenda, I will not make any comment either. So number 6, keep North Stonington affordable, Winterchog Hill. They presented to us back in June, and we gave them a little time and the board of selectmen a little time to reflect. And I gave Mary Ann Ricker a bunch of questions, a list of questions that she was able to answer. And I sent those to you, explaining that those were my questions, and Nicole and Brett, you would have additional questions probably. I also sent you the packet with their cover letter. And I sent it to you again. You probably might have had it, but it was the original presentation. So, Mary Ann, you have the floor. Would you like to speak to us again? Oh, the microphone's down.
Hello, is that better?
That's perfect.
Okay, good. All right, in the list of questions that Bob gave me, number 3 says, who are we? I will give a very brief explanation because I do want to answer that again. And I do want to, as an introduction to our request. There, how's that? Good. All right, in response, okay, who are we? I will give a very brief background of the formation of Keeping North Stonington Affordable and then move on to our purpose tonight, a formal request to the Board of Selectpersons. KINSA was formed out of a recommendation to form an affordable housing land trust contained in the 2013 housing plan put forward by the North Stonington Affordable Housing Committee. The plan was accepted by the Board of Selectmen and subsequently incorporated in the 2013 Plan of Conservation and Development. That recommendation was amended to form a nonprofit housing corporation. A group of local citizens incorporated as Keeping North Stonington Affordable in 2017 and received their nonprofit status in 2018. Their goal is to provide housing for those who wish to live in North Stonington who otherwise would not afford to do so. So with that as an introduction, I would like to read the request that was put forward in letter form and submitted to the Board of Selectpersons and focus what we are here tonight to do. Dear sirs and madam, Keeping North Stonington Affordable in KINSA requests an affirmative vote on approval to proceed to obtain site control of approximately 10 acres off Wrights Road, plot 92 to 2332, 93 67 37, and 990002. As shown on page 1 of the addendum that was provided for you. The terms of the site control would be negotiated with the town to include a term of 18 to 24 months in which Kinza would seek funding for an affordable housing apartment complex, the conceptual plan of which is presented in the attached addendum. The site control would include an option for Kinza to purchase or lease the property as described above and presented on page 1 of the addendum, as agreed upon by the two parties. Kinza's purchase or lease of the property would be contingent on obtaining funding. The contract granting site control would contain an option for an extension of length of time if needed. Sincerely submitted, Keeping North Stonington Affordable Housing President. I want to underscore the fact of what we are requesting tonight is a affirmative vote to pass this on to planning and zoning under 824 guidelines for site control. I would like our discussion to focus on that. That is what we're here for, a vote for approval for site control. Thank you. I would like to introduce Dave Bergo, who's been gracious enough to work on some of the answers of questions that were submitted to me by Bob and make the trip from. And so with that, I will.
This is great to be back. We did talk a lot of this last time we were here, and the questions are good questions. They're appropriate questions that would be appropriate to keep moving this forward. So I have prepared answers to them that I can talk about briefly, but also submit for the record, so you'll have them for future references as you look at it in more detail going forward. As has been said, my name is David Berto. I started my little company 28 years ago to help local nonprofits develop affordable housing throughout Connecticut. I'm very happy to be working here to help generate affordable housing in North Stonington with the Kinza Group and with the town. It takes everybody working together to do that. It's very hard, and that's why local nonprofits really work with someone like myself who does this all the time, so we know all the details about how to move things forward. There were two sets of questions. There was a set of questions that were sent for the presenter, and I'll go over those briefly. And then there were some items about the Board of Selectmen research. I have some inputs on those too for consideration. And I'll just go through these quickly because we've talked about some of them before, and we can talk about them as more in detail as necessary from the discussions that you guys in the town has tonight.
And Dave, just to clarify, the questions were from the first selectman, and the other two selectmen have not added questions. They will add some at the end.
Yes.
And as far as the Board of Selectmen research, that the answers were done by you, correct? They weren't done by the Board of Selectmen. So we'll listen to the answers that you came up with. It'll be great. But leave yourself some time at the end for the other two selectmen to ask questions. Thank you.
Certainly. Who is making the formal request? You've already heard the formal request is by Kinza. Will the request and terms be put in writing? They were summarized in the request, and we'll talk a little bit more about those as we go through this. What is the background? That's been answered. Is there a project schedule? The project schedule to get from here to when we open the doors is really dependent on when we can start the detailed planning when we know that we have site control. So everything is hinging around site control. This is going to be a contingency site control. It's not guaranteed that you're giving up the property, but that you're providing a contract that if the terms of the contract are met, the property will be available. And that's that contract that allows us to talk to funders to move the project forward even into the design phase. So the schedule will be determined after we can establish a schedule for site control. One of the things about some of these questions and other questions we've had, and okay, how's that? That's better? Okay. Is this thing on? One of the things about a number of these questions is that some of the answers will only come later as we can get into more detail. And so that's why we can't answer everything today, because we haven't really started into some of the details. Will the buildings have fire protection sprinklers, emergency generators? There really is no public water out there. There's only going to be local wells that are drilled. Those local wells will not provide the water supply that's necessary for fire sprinklers like you would have where there is public water. The fire code will be met by making sure that there are appropriate fire separations between the units as required and appropriate alarms as far as fire and smoke are concerned. So that's how fire safety will be provided in this situation. The overall cost of the project, this is one of those answers that comes a little bit later as well, because we aren't to that level. But we did present a conceptual plan last time, and that conceptual plan had about 25 units in it. And normally, if a project like this costs construction of $250,000 a unit, with the construction, the site construction, and the water and the sewer and everything, you're dealing with, you know, a little bit over $6 million for a project costs, and then that will be determined in more detail later. The next two are something that really comes a little bit later. What's the assessed value, and then what's the property tax value? That really will be determined working with the assessor to establish the process of valuation for the value of the property with the restrictions that are on it as affordable housing. And then the property taxes will be determined with discussions with the town about any other considerations. It's very difficult and very expensive to build affordable housing in relationship to the rents that you can get. And so it has been mentioned that KINSA is not asking for any town funding for the project, but the town's not getting any property taxes now. And if we can show some level of financial cooperation, we can then help to attract all the money that we need in order to make the project work. So that'll be part of the ongoing discussion with the assessor and the property taxes when we get a little bit further along during the conditional site control that we're talking about. Is the project going to pay to demo the existing structures on the property? If there are structures on the property and they need to be demoed because it's part of the project, yes, that'll just be part of the project. We'll manage the property once it's completed. KINSA will continue to own the property, continue to have ultimate responsibility for the property, but they will hire a well-experienced property management company who will do the day-to-day operations of the project for Kinsa. They will interact with the tenants. They will take care of maintenance. They will take care of capital repairs. They will prepare budgets, and they will make sure that there's compliance with the tenants, all under the oversight and supervision of Kinsa, who will retain responsibility.
I have a quick question. It's Nicole. We are very blessed right now to have an active Kinsa group. What happens in 5 years if that group somehow dissolves or we lose interest? I know we have the property management company, but what happens then if Kinsa somehow and for whatever reason dissolves in the next several years?
That does happen. Not very often, but it does happen. Maybe in a couple of years, maybe in 20 years. And the agreements with the funders, which would then be the agreements that you approve, is that if the ownership is no longer viable, the ownership will be transferred to somebody else who has the same mission, the same 501c3, and the same experience in managing affordable housing projects. And there's a half a dozen to a dozen of them in the state of Connecticut. So that is what could occur if it ever comes to that point, and that has occurred occasionally on some other projects. How much parking will be required? That will be part of the details as well, depending on the mix of bedroom types. But we normally start with 2 parking spaces per unit and then some extra parking spaces for visitors. But sometimes it's more than that, sometimes it's less than that, depending on the ratio of the bedroom sizes, and that would be worked out. And all of this is part of ultimately what the town has to approve through planning and zoning anyway. So this will all be part of the details that is prepared by Kinsa and their technical team, and then presented and reviewed and revised if necessary in order to get town approvals. How much drainage will be required? That's really something that comes later. Civil engineers will be part of the project. They will make sure that the drainage is done properly, that stormwater is properly calculated and managed. And part of this is in a way so that whatever goes off-site after the project is developed will not be any more than what goes off-site now. That's the general criteria for site drainage. That will require some drainage collection. That will probably require some drainage retention and monitored outflow. And then it'll be determined where that goes and in what quantities as part of, again, the design details that everybody will review and approve. Will it be directed to Wrights Road? And if there's upgrades there, will those be part of the project? We'll find that out. But if there are any off-site requirements that the project imposes, that will be part of the project design and part of the project costs. That won't be an exterior cost to the town. And that's who will pay for this. Will the final design allow for open space and playgrounds? Yes, it certainly will. That's very important. We don't have the details yet, but that'll be part of the design that goes forward when we get to that level of details. The other page here is Board of Selectmen research. I've prepared some inputs for your consideration on that as well. Can the town place a property on hold? That's really what we're talking about here, is a conditional site control commitment that is placing it on hold. It's taking it away from availability with certain conditions and certain timeframes. If those conditions are met, then the project gets to move forward. So, yes, and that's what we're talking about here. What is the procedure? We've talked about that. The town, for the disposition of any town-owned property, has to get an 8-24 referral from planning and zoning. And then I believe the procedure is it'll have to go to a town meeting and be approved for site control and disposition, ultimate disposition of the property. Can a group or person disturb the land while the town owns it? That's typically done. You know, there's testing that has to be done. There's testing that's already been done. There will be more testing that needs to be done. Kenso will coordinate that with the town, do that in a way that minimizes disturbances. But that'll just be done with the town approvals in order to do that as part of site control. If the property is in a hold status, which is if it's under site control, and you guys get a better offer, can you just take a better offer? And the short answer is no. It's a contract, and it has to be a contract in order for the organization to attract the funds to do the work. Nobody's going to give anybody any money on a property that can be taken away. So that's just inherent in being able to move this project forward. If there was a change in federal recognition, could that affect the ability to maintain site control? The site control is a contract, and it has to be. But if something really significant happens, there are ways that the two parties can have discussions to reach a mutual agreement. I couldn't tell you what that is because we don't know what the contract issues might be, but there's always the ability to have discussions throughout the process.
Quick
Yeah.
question.
The last two, what does the property card say and what does the deed say? I don't have details of that. You guys have details of that.
I have a quick question on if for whatever reason federal recognition was obtained by one of our groups in town and you're already in progress with building and we've gotten that far, what happens then? I'm sure not much different than any other property that is owned if it were to become federally recognized tribal land. Like no different than.
Well, ultimately, we're talking about possibility of eminent domain, I'm assuming, but there have to be a taking of the land at whatever the value was at the time based on whatever has been done to that point.
So there's two things, Nicole. So if the Eastern Pequots got recognized, that they wouldn't automatically get that land. That would have to be purchased, as Dave just mentioned. However, that land value changed, right? Because now you've got a recognized tribe on a piece of state property reservation. And I assume, as the Mashantuckets did, would want to get the surrounding land to be able to develop what they wanted to develop. So that land becomes very valuable to somebody. At the time when they got recognized back the last time in the early 2000s, the Eastern Pequot Development Corporation, which was headed up by some strong money, bought that property. And then and they were going to develop it. And then when the recognition got removed by the federal government, the land now is almost worthless. That's why they were behind in the taxes, and that's why the town got the land back, and that's why it's town land today. So, yes, if there's recognition to the local tribe, in this case, Eastern Pequots, the value of that land changes. And I think that's why the question before that one was, what if that happened and the town was offered, just to throw a number out, say $2 million for that land, and we were tied up on a proposal with Kenser for $1, we'll say, for 18 months. Is there a way out of the contract? Is there a way we can dissolve it? Trying to explain to the taxpayers in town why we wouldn't take $2 million because we were tied up for $1 in a prearranged agreement without an out. It might be a tough thing to explain. And I spoke to Mary Ann about that a little bit, and I think that if there was going to be a contract to go to the planning and zoning with, to say, this is, we're looking to get, have you decided whether site control is a possibility? The Board of Selectmen have voted to send it to them if that's what we choose to do. Is there any stipulation in that contract that things could change? And at this point, we haven't really answered that question yet.
So that is what would have to happen, and it would probably be appropriate if you think there's a possibility. Probably it'd be appropriate to work out some language in the site control document that addresses how that would be handled if it occurred.
Brett, you have questions, I'm sure.
Well, I have a lot of questions, but I figured I'd wait until I hear all the answers. Are we
That-
done with those?
That was the last question on the last page, so we're good to go.
Okay, so I guess when I saw this on the agenda, and I know we discussed it briefly and we heard the presentation, and then hearing Mary Ann speak, looking for a vote on this, sounds like tonight to send it to planning and zoning. I can tell you to start, I won't be prepared to vote on this evening. To me, there's a lot more discussion that we as a board, I would think, need to have based on some of the answers that you've given us here. And to be honest, when I look through this, and I appreciate all the work that everyone's done, and I think we're headed in the right direction of trying to get some affordable housing moving in North Stonington. But a lot of this, to me, aren't real answers to these questions. Point blank, they really aren't. When I look at some of the stuff from the old presentation that went to the town meeting, town vote, and then again in a referendum, they did a pro forma based on the plans, preliminary plans. They had a lot more concrete, I won't say concrete, they had a lot more numbers to be presented for the board back then to look at, and for the residents to look at. With these, it's a lot of, we'll know more later. And I feel like as an elected board to oversee some of the decisions of the town, that we need to kind of have some of those answers before we can even possibly send it to planning and zoning to see where we go from there. So for instance, we've talked in the past, these are just some of my comments. We've talked in the past about maybe this isn't the best site for affordable housing. It came up at the last vote. It's been talked about in numerous boards and things like that. So part of it is, if this is what we'd like to do and help Kinsa achieve their goals, is it best to look at the actual market value of this property and then sell this property to someone else and use that money to buy a parcel that is more conducive to transportation, to town resources? That's one of the things that I thought about, because we keep talking about this parcel and there's been a lot of roadblocks along the way. So just because we have it doesn't mean we can't utilize that for another piece of property somewhere else. And then as we go down the process, so in the last property that we did sell to Kinsa, we haven't really seen much movement since that property sold. And I was hoping that we would see something by now to see progression forward, because I am concerned about town funds being utilized to move this forward before we have more definite. So I did look into, and thanks for Christine for providing me this, but we spent about $7,000 just to work on that deed and that closing on that last property. So, and that's probably on the lower number. I'm sure there were other hours of time spent. So I am concerned about committing town resources to this before we have more information. Personally, I'd like to see an estimate of market value of the property before we vote on it, to move it forward, because we would need that. We would need to tell the residents where we are on it. We also, I haven't heard anything from the Affordable Housing Committee, who is the Selectmen's appointed board to be the resources for affordable housing, and we haven't heard them weigh in on it at all. And I don't know if we've asked them to, but it would be good to at least get some feedback from them. As I look through the packet, the tax incentive for 10 years. That concerns me a little bit because I don't think we've provided that to any other developers in town that have done affordable housing. I don't think we've ramped it up over 10 years. I think when they were built, that's when they started being taxed on it. And how would that work compared to the market rate, compared to the affordable rate? Does the market rate rentals start taxing right away? And are you looking for the affordable properties to be the ramped up tax incentives? And as we go through this process, is it right for us as a town just to offer it to one party? Or do we need to put it out to bid like we did other parcels that Kinsa ended up getting one for $1 and they weren't the high bidder, but of all the proposals, it made the most sense at that time. Because I worry about infrastructure up there. I know with the new law in Connecticut, anything over 30 parking spaces, now we need EV charging stations up there. 10%, I think it is. Do we have the infrastructure and the power going up that way to provide all this? Have we done a school impact study? Now I know, and I'm looking at Juliet because I know she will always say that the studies say that, it doesn't have an impact to your schools, but I always remember those discussions on 1 and 2 bedrooms. Now we're going to 3 and 4 bedrooms. Does that have another impact on our schools? So I think those are some of the questions that I'd like to see answered. And also our safety between our fire and EMS. Based on the preliminary plans that we saw, does our fire department have the capable equipment to address the needs up there? So I know that sounds like a lot of things all at once, but those are some of the things that I'd like to have answers to before I can vote to move that forward. But I also wanted to bring up that property exchange too, if that is something that, I don't know if Kinsa thought about that either, but if we go down this path, are we forcing a project in that location because we own that property? Or does it make sense to look at the bigger picture and look at other uses for that property, or to get rid of that property and use that money to buy another parcel? I know that was a lot. I apologize.
Good questions. Do you have the ability to maybe type those up and send the Board of Selectmen and to KNSA a copy of the questions? I'm sure they didn't write them all down, so if you
Yeah.
have the ability to do that, even if you can do it at town hall if you'd like to.
Yeah, no, I can. A lot of this is probably more of our discussion on fire EMS and all those
But
things.
some
but-
are, yeah, and but some are answers that they might be able to
Correct.
provide. Nicole.
Yeah, so Brett, I'll agree with you. This is a huge project, huge decision. And until I really started kind of doing the prep and understanding the process, I felt the same way, that I felt like I needed more answers, and I'll pose this as both a question and a comment. So from here tonight, if we decide to vote on this and we decide as a board to vote affirmative and send it, the next step is that it needs to go to planning and zoning, correct?
The next step, we go to planning and zoning for an 8-24 review.
Okay. So that then happens, and if planning and zoning decides to approve and move forward, then we form a contract with Kinsa and we put the land on hold for anywhere from 18 to 24 months. And then when they have to secure all the funding for it, come back to the town with all of the plans and all of the questions answered, and then it needs to go to a town meeting for final approval. Am I correct in that process, Christine?
Well, I think there's 2 questions. One question is, can we tie up the land for a certain amount of time is one question, which may have to go to a town meeting. Then the second question is, does the town have an appetite to, once they've seen the project, to approve the project to be
Yeah.
built? But that has to go back to another 8-24. So the process has to happen twice, as far as I know. And I think that I guess my only question is, if we were to vote tonight and vote yes, what am I bringing to planning and zoning? There's no contract, there's nothing, I have what Marianne wrote in a letter. And is that gonna be enough to tell planning and zoning what they're planning on doing? Or should I need, and I have their packet, but I guess the question from planning and zoning would be, are you willing to tie up the land? We have not talked about the contract that Dave just mentioned, that we might have to put some sort of an addendum to it, that if this happens, then this can happen, and so on. So we haven't got that far yet.
So that makes me feel even better that all of that has to happen before any of this takes place. So I think it made me feel better to know that the weight is not on my shoulders or the three of our shoulders to make this decision. The weight is going to be on the town's people to make this decision in absolutely one town meeting, if not two town meetings, correct?
Mhm.
No?
Why wouldn't we? Julie, you have to go up here and speak.
And just really quickly, tying up that land, right now, that land is sitting there doing absolutely nothing for us. So putting it on hold for 1.5 to 2 years, to me, does nothing one way or another for the town. So-
No, but I think looking at it from Kent's point of view, how much money, time and effort do they want to put into that? Finding out later on that the town has no appetite to do the project, which kind of happened the last time, right, when Juliet was involved. Go ahead, Juliet.
Which is why, so last time we did all that work up front. So we got a grant to engineering and create the site plan and, get all of the questions that people would have about what does it look like, where's the drainage going, all of that stuff. And we went through that process sort of all at once. That's not what they're asking for tonight. They're just asking for that first bit, that site control. But if they get the site control and find the funding, the project then just gets approved by planning and zoning. It doesn't, the part about selling the land that triggers the 8-24, that's what goes to town meeting. So we did it all at once 11 years ago, 12 years ago at this point. That's why it went through that process and the town got to vote on the project itself. That's not their ask tonight, though.
Yeah.
Their ask is simply to tie up to
But
have.
the
site
ask
control.
is to tie up the land with the guarantee they'll be able to go back to the town and get approval to build the project, correct?
But that would be planning and zoning, not a town meeting.
But we'd have to go to a town meeting as we're leasing or selling the land.
That's sort of what you're doing now.
But we'd have to go to a town meeting to do that.
That, this first bit, yes, they're asking for the site control, that goes to, planning and zoning and a town meeting now. But that's still not gonna give you any details about the project.
But if the town agreed to lease the land for 2 years for $1, we'll say, and nobody comes around the next 2 years, offers multiple millions of dollars for the property, are you saying that that doesn't go back in front of the town as far as a town meeting to get approval from the town to build the project?
I mean, I guess that would depend on the contract, if you had to renew the lease or something like that in 2 years, maybe, but.
Because the state statute is for final approval, so we should have all the details to go to,
That goes to planning and zoning.
but
I
the
mean, we
final,
could have done it that way,
but the final, so state statute says before the town could lease or sell the property, it has to go to a town meeting for final approval. So meaning all the information should be there on the lease.
yes.
I'm not saying, but
not
you're
the
right, not
project,
saying the
just
project.
The details about, yes, how the
But-
lease is gonna work or if you're gonna sell it, blah, blah, blah.
Right,
that
but
kind
to
of stuff.
me, so to answer your point about you feel better that it's not on our shoulders, to me, we're elected for certain reasons. And part of it is to look at this and give our input and let the town decide. But we as elected members of the Board of Selectmen, we kind of see all different aspects of, and a lot of members in the audience here pay attention to everything. But we have to remember, not everyone does. So we don't know what the issues might be with the fire or with some of the infrastructure. So if we can't vet this and feel comfortable that if what they're telling us, the town has the appetite for, or the town could support, if we have more details about some of these things, then we shouldn't send it forward until we feel strongly that, hey, these questions are answered. or whatever questions you may have.
But
answered
understand
with
all
those
of that
things.
would be, that's planning and zoning's jurisdiction.
That
That's
for the
their,
project, but we also have to
Right, but-
think about,
it wouldn't be approved if it didn't meet
but,
fire
this-
code and things.
exactly, but the planning and zoning doesn't care about the facilities, the school impact study. They don't care about that. That we should be caring about. We're here to superintend the needs of the town. That's how the state statute reads. And I just worry that if we just vote to say, okay, it's out of our hands, planning, zoning, you deal with it now. We're not doing our job as selectmen to vet at least a decent amount of the detail.
Yeah, the school, maybe the school impact, sure, but things like drainage and fire safety and
Oh,
building
oh,
code, that's all.
No, I agree with that, Julia. That's not our role. One of the questions that maybe you can help me with is if this moves forward and I know you're looking at all different funding, is there a benefit to the town leasing it compared to selling it with regards to, do we have any access to, I wrote it down here somewhere. Incentive housing zone program? With the development costs and stuff like that?
No, there's no funding left in the incentive housing funding unless I missed something in the last year or two, but that's gone. The state doesn't pay anymore. So that was part of the project before, that we were gonna create an incentive housing zone and then the funding disappeared for that, so
Okay.
we didn't
They still
bother
have
with
it listed, that's why.
I know, but
It
there's,
doesn't say funding's gone, so I just, as I
There's-
was researching it, that came up and I didn't know. Cause that's with the town looking at it, so I don't know how that, because the last time it was a joint effort between Kinsa and affordable housing,
because
right?
we thought that there was incentive housing
Right.
money out there, but it dried up pretty quickly and never was refunded.
Gotcha. And where'd the $20,000 grant come from back then?
Home CT.
Okay,
And so you do have a lot of the engineering. I mean, you do have some of the details of the drainage. I mean, Mylone and McBroom is an amazing company and did an amazing job. And this is a much smaller project than that. So if it worked for what they were proposing, it would certainly work for a smaller project. So
So when you're saying we have, but we don't have.
you got it in your
you have
packet.
it. Well, it's in the packet that the presentation they gave us.
Yeah,
So I guess to Brett's point, and I guess the answer, the question, should we lease or sell? Why would the town want to sell a property that could be very valuable down the road if things happen?
oh, I agree, but those are some of the discussions that I don't know how we make that tonight.
Well, I thought Mary Ann said the only question they want to answer tonight was, should the land be put into control for a period of time? According to what Juliet's saying, is that decision then holds that if we agree to send it to the 824 for that question only, we're automatically locking ourselves in to say we're also agreeing to the fact that the project can be built and not go back to the town a second time, which I can't imagine on town property why we wouldn't have to go back to the town again. Private property, I agree with you, but on town property, why would we have to go back again?
maybe David can help, but it's 824. There's very specific things that trigger that 824. But it's the sale, the lease, I don't know, there's a lot of things, but it's not, planning and zoning is the one that approves development of the property.
Right, but I mean, I understand your point. If
The
the
town doesn't get to
town-
weigh in on all
the
development.
town, but if the town, so when we leased the old school over here, so the residents knew what we were leasing. They knew the property that was here. They understood what we were leasing. We're
Yeah.
trying to say, hey, and this might be a bigger battle if we don't have more information, because we're saying residents of North Stonington, please have faith in us that what we say is gonna be on this property will be there. Cause
This-
once you
this is-
lose,
this
once
is
you
more
vote on it
difficult.
for that without a plan. I mean,
This is an organization that's working hard to try to secure funding to do projects. It's not the same. We had a grant to get all of the pre-development work done. That's not the case here. So they can't give you the answers the detail that you desire right now until they have site control and can go get the funding to do that. They don't have a home CT grant to get you that info. What you do have at your disposal is a whole lot of that exact information in my old office in a file that
But-
does describe what's possible on that land.
But
that
based
might
on a
answer
different
some-
project.
Right, but it's similar enough that, I mean, it's gonna answer some of the questions you just asked about fire safety and drainage and some of the questions that were in your.
I'm just thinking it's a
Stuff,
hard
yeah.
sell to the residents to vote on a blank canvas and say, this is what we're hoping to do. I mean,
Yep, you're voting.
to be
for
honest,
the ability to put.
I say,
affordable
I
housing
always
there.
hate when you say to be honest, because that, you should be honest all the time when you talk. But, if you look at the history, so the firehouse, we voted based on a picture, right? Of what we thought we were gonna get for that. We didn't get what we voted on because of things that changed, financial circumstances and costs. So I just worry that we go through this process and the town says no, because they don't have any details.
Right, and I don't know, David, if in that contract for the lease that there's like provisions for saying no more than X amount.
This is a series of conversations that occurs frequently. And they're valid conversations and they're valid questions. I would represent that what you had last time was still conceptual, but there was a lot of site engineering that went into it so that it could move forward as it did. And as been said, a lot of that is still valid, and we've been in discussion with the same site engineers to move forward. You do have a new conceptual layout for the housing. And if it's important, and I understand that it is, we can prepare more details on the project finances and on the project layouts from what we know and from the experience I have doing this all over the place. We could provide a conceptual pro forma for the project based on the conceptual layouts that you have, because that's frankly all you had last time too.
Right.
We could do that if that would help to move this forward.
Well, David, it sounds, with what Juliet said, is it sounds like it's only gonna go in front of town meeting one time in the beginning. And
Yes.
I would think affordable housing, or in this case, Kensa would want to have as much information to give to the taxpayer as possible if they're not gonna get a second shot at it. Now, I know that the last administration had a referendum to lease out the school. When we actually got around to leasing out the school, we had to go back to a town meeting with a contract to say who was leasing out and what were they paying per square foot and what were they paying for utilities. So that was 2 trips on town property, 2 different town meetings. So why would this be different? Why would this not go to 2 town meetings?
The town meeting that we are all talking about here is the town meeting to vote to approve the conditional transfer of the property with certain terms to Kensa to build affordable housing. What I've heard, what I'm talking about here is I think we can provide more detail before you go to that town meeting so that you can tell to the town people what it is you're intending on doing within variations that always occur when you're working through the details. But I think we can do that so that when the town is asked to vote, they will have a much better understanding of what they're voting on.
So there's not a town meeting just to put a hold on the property. You're talking about a town meeting to actually do the project.
Well, I'm talking about a town meeting to do both, because the hold on the property is the contract for the transfer of the land if the other requirements are met, which is funding and planning and zoning and wetlands approval. So that's why it's important to show you guys and the townsfolk as much as we can about what the project will look like before you ask the town to vote on it. So that when they are voting on it, they know what they're voting on in more detail than we've provided so far. But then that's a contract that if the criteria are met, then there's not another meeting to approve the sale, because the sale has been approved with conditions in the first town meeting.
So that first meeting, you're looking at a one long-term lease with the first 2 years would be based contingency. But we're looking at one lease for the long term, because that's what would have to go to a town meeting is the long term.
Well, it's a
full
transfer
lease.
of land. It's ultimately, the town meeting is for the transfer of rights to the land. After the 2 years of, to time to raise the money and get everything approved, then there would either be a long-term lease or a deed of sale, either one, whichever you want.
So then we would have to go back to the town at that point.
No,
Yes,
no.
so I disagree. So state statute says final approval. So final approval is all the details for that long-term lease.
I think they're saying that the first contract would include that in it. Is that what you're saying? That detail of lease to sell would be included in the first contract, which would be what went to a town meeting.
But we don't even know if we're looking to lease or sell it at this point.
Well,
So
you
how can
will.
we vote now to send that to,
We can't vote tonight on it because
Well, we don't know the terms of the contract.
right, so that's
Right,
what I'm
we're not
saying.
do-
So
we're not-
the first question or first comment was hoping that we would vote in the affirmative to send it over to planning and zoning, but we don't have those.
right. And Mary Ann mentioned that she only wanted the one question talked about answered tonight, which was the transfer or the putting the property on hold for a period of time, not the final approval on a project. That's, to me, there's two questions.
So.
But I think what I hear them saying though is that, well, do we get an opportunity to approve of the contract? We are part of that contract,
have to.
correct? So we would be sitting down with Kensa and drawing up that contract. So
Yes.
that's where we would have a voice and a say in how that contract reads.
Right.
All what is asked of us tonight is to vote yes or no to send this to planning and zoning for their review.
See, to me, that's putting the cart before the horse. If we can't if we don't understand the contract terms, why would we send it? Why would we waste planning and zoning's time and I'm sure an attorney's time at some point that the town will be paying for before we have that information?
Then what is an alternative first step? How do we start the ball rolling to even decide whether this is something that the town wants or not? If this isn't the first step, then what is?
Yeah, let me suggest going back to what I was saying when I stepped up here second time. I think we need to give you more details so that you know in more detail what's going to be built, what the finances are, and work together with the town for the contract so that you have that information. You don't need to go to 8-24 immediately. You just have to go to 8-24 as a precursor to getting to a town meeting. So if the town meeting was pushed out a little bit as we gave you more information, we evaluated it, and we worked on a contract together, you could then fit in 8-24 within that schedule when you had more information.
Which I agree with. To me, that first meeting was just the presentation. This starts our dialogue of where we go from here and if we move forward, how we move forward, because no matter what happens or anyone's opinions on this, if this is a direction we're headed, we have to move in that direction together. We can't, we have to have all these things answered and being able to, and I think we should feel confident in what we send over to planning and zoning that
Yes.
So we support it.
that we support it or we feel comfortable with it. Because, so for me, when I mentioned that the tax ramp up is a concern for me. If we're not on board with that, does Kinsa say, no, then we don't want to move forward if we're not getting the tax abatement for the first 10 years? These are things I think we need to know before we even go further into that.
When you asked the question about affordable units versus non-affordable, on all the units in that affordable? There's no none.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I think that, when we speak to people in town about affordable housing, I think the majority, 80, 85, 90% of people in town say they feel North Stonington needs more affordable housing. I think that's pretty much a given. I think the pushback is always, is it in my backyard? Is it in the rural area? Is it in the wrong spot? So it's more of a question about where it's located versus do we need it? And I think if there's gonna be any pushback on this project, it's because of the location. But it doesn't mean that that's not the right location, it just means that's where the questions are gonna come and that's where it would have to be answered. But I think if you asked everybody in town right now if we need affordable housing, I think most people would agree we do. I mean, you can't pick up the newspaper without reading about affordable housing these days and how lack there is. And towns like North Stonington lead the list of towns that need it more. I mean, we have a very low percentage. So I think that we, as a board, agree. I don't want to speak for the other board members, that we think we do need affordable housing. And I think that if you want us to support it, it's just, we have to just go through this painstaking process of answering all the questions, because we're going to get asked the questions. And the worst thing is if we don't have the answers to the questions. And we always have to be the stewards that are watching the taxpayers' pocketbook, right? And you're all taxpayers too, so it's your pocketbook also. But we have to watch what we do to protect the taxpayer and the town of North Stonington. So I don't know where else to go with this evening, with the exception of what Dave recommended was to keep gathering information. I don't mind putting this on the agenda pretty much every meeting, and some meetings you'll have nothing for us, and some meetings we'll meet and we'll talk about it. But I mean, it's, if I say it's on the August 22nd meeting and Marianne says, we've got nothing for you this meeting, we'll take it off. Or we'll just table it until the next meeting. But I think, as Brett said, it's a dialogue that probably began this evening. And the more we speak about it, the better it'll be for all of us. I would like to ask if there's any public,
just want-
no, go ahead.
Can I just ask, so the comment I made regarding the property, is this your ideal property, or is a land transfer or swap worth looking into?
There's always the question about location. And if you're going to build or produce affordable housing, you have to get land that is free or very low cost. Because you can't build affordable housing if you have to put in all that money. for
Right, that's
land.
why I suggested the land
So-
swap or something of
Well,
that nature.
That brings up a whole other question. Do you have land to swap? You wanna, you wanna sell this property? Who's gonna buy this property? Maybe down the road, who knows when?
Well, we did have people, so part of my concern about just sending it over to planning and zoning is we did that when we talked about selling the property, and planning and zoning voted 4-1 to keep the property. And they referenced open space with it. So my idea is,
I think the question was different then. I think this
was
is
December.
conceptually,
November, sorry.
you have to deal on a different level. Is this something you, as the governing body, want to see in our town? Conceptually, if that's a yes, then where do we put it? How do we facilitate it? Because it has to be facilitated.
right, but I think those are two separate questions. So I think your question is right. Is it something we want to see in town? And the second question is what you said, is that the location we want to see it? So those are two separate questions. And that's my concern. And to be frank, that's my biggest concern, is that we went down this path on that one parcel prior and it got voted down.
You mean PNC? Is that what
No,
we're
I'm
about?
talking about the Winnichog.
Oh, when it.
So-
when it was presented.
The P and Z, that, I mean, yes, they voted down to sell the property because
Right.
they talked about open space with it.
Perhaps that did not conceptually fit into what, in my mind, what the town wanted to happen. The affordable housing benefits the town, not only in providing housing for people who otherwise could not afford to live here, but also the diversity, the number of people that can go to our shops, go to our restaurants, fill boards, fill vacancies on boards. They become a working part of our community. And conceptually, that's what you want to do with our town. You want to move our town forward. You don't want us to be all a bunch of old guys, which we are all.
But I also
becoming.
would like a place for our older residents
And-
to
and
live. So a
older-
lot of people want what you're
older
talking
residents,
about, but
it's a-
is
it's a
Winterchog
level-
that property too?
Excuse me, it's a level playing field. Older residents can apply, younger residents, it's the diversity, and that's what Department of Housing promotes. They don't promote segregated housing, segregated in terms of age or any other. They want a diverse population in housing that they support. If North Stonington only wants to build senior housing, you can put in a grant for it. It will not be funded. But if they really want it, they can build land, housing themselves on that property with town money, and then you make the rules of who goes in. If you're going to access public money to do this, you have to go by, as Dave says, fair housing. And so you cannot discriminate, on.
You're right, but I feel, so this could be a longer debate at some point, but when you say some of those statements, you can say, well, what are we doing here when we're only looking at one entity to give this to? And we're not saying, hey, let's put this out on the market, see if maybe there's a senior developer that wants it because it's free land, so it makes sense for them to build a senior housing here. They don't need to go to the housing authority and they don't care.
Yeah,
I'm just,
if
the
you're a
reason that
party-
came up is I know 3 seniors in the past
Oh, yeah.
month and a half that are moving out of town, and that was their
Absolutely.
concern is, I would have loved to stay here,
And we hear
but
that
not maintain
all-
what I needed, but I'm looking for a senior community. That's
Brad,
what they were saying.
Brad, we hear that all the time. I'm telling you the rules that we have to operate under.
Right, for federal money.
For
And state.
federal money.
Yep.
You want to put in town money, build what you can, and then make the rules. But if you're going to access $6 million, put up housing like this, I don't know how.
Rick, we can move along to some
Yeah.
other comments.
So,
Jen, do you want to?
Think, Brett, what I would like to ask comes from Bob's statement that 80 to 85% of the townspeople would support more affordable housing. So what I would respectfully ask you is, we have come forward with a project that starts to address that need. If you deem that this is not the property, I would ask that you propose an alternate property. We are a group of volunteers who are desperately looking for property that meets Mary Ann's requirements. It's basically free or donated. So if this isn't the property, can you please offer us one that might be a reasonable alternative? I would ask that of you if you deem that this one doesn't meet the town's needs.
Thank you, Jen. Comments? Anybody else? Jen, another Jen.
I think one thing is getting lost in this discussion, and that is Kinsa is asking for 10 acres. There are 100 acres on Winterchog Hill. So this discussion about, is it the right property? I think I need to remind everyone, there's 10 times the amount of space left to do as you wish with Winterchog Hill. We're asking for a tiny sliver of the entire space for affordable housing. If you would prefer the rest be left open space, wonderful. If you want to put in playing fields, wonderful. But our question is on 10 of 100 acres. That's all we're asking for.
Thank you, Jen.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Nicole.
Before the next one. So I'm having a hard time in looking at the drawings, to understand where the existing homes on Wrights Road are in relation to the proposed complex. can you, I just, and then my second question is I've heard from residents on Wrights Road, is there any way, and Julia, I don't know if you know from the past study, to change the entrance? I don't know if, wetlands is impacted, but is there a way to have the entrance in and out of the complex to come from Winterchog rather than Wrights Road? So I wanna, am I missing it? I wanna see where the current. All right. Bob drew in the houses for me, so I have a little bit of a better idea. So, go ahead. Nope, that's all right. No, I'm done for the time being.
Patricia Oaks, 167 Winterchog. Our driveway is literally our only access is Wrights Road. All of our homes are on Wrights Road, and then the reservation starts. So anything that happens on Wrights Road directly affects us. So of course, we're very concerned. Couple of points, which I mentioned at previous meeting. It's a private road on town property, and it is the only residence egress out of the property. If anything happened, we're trapped. It's our driveway, as I said, safety and concern and security for residents of Wrights Road should be the first priority of the town. If anything happened on that portion of Wrights Road, we would be trapped. Number two, Kenza stated that Winterchog Hill Wrights Road property was a gift to the town. It was not in fact a gift, but a transaction sale because Cindy May and Graham XL LLC did owe back taxes to the town, and were in arrears. It was a property tax forgiveness transaction. There, Kenza also stated at the wine tasting and the last BOS meeting that it was the wish and desire of Gramenex, meaning the owners of that property, was to be used for affordable housing. It was in fact not the wish and desire of Gramenex. There was a discussion that ensued between the town and this forgiveness of taxes that in the future, North Stonington does know, they're aware that they need affordable housing property or an area for town use. So that is incorrect information. The wishes and desires of Gramenex and Cindy May was to invest in a resort and casino there when the federal recognition was temporarily gotten. When it was lost, they backed out of the deal and just didn't pay the taxes and let it sit until they thought they could get recognition again, which to date still has not occurred. KNSA published both of these statements, in fact, in the North Stonington Quarterly, which is widely read by residents. When will correction be made to these claims that are incorrect, and maybe an apology be made for publishing false information in an attempt to sway residents' votes in their favor? I believe this is not an ethical practice. Thank you.
Additional comments?
I have a comment.
Richard Chicola, Fowler Road. So, am I correct to understand that, you said this is all gonna be affordable housing? Okay, and so the rentals will be at market value? No. No. Okay, so here's the question. If I'm renting one of the apartments for $1,800, or, okay, if the market value is $1,800 and somebody's renting an apartment and they pay $1,200, does the property owner, the building owner, and the management, how do they compensate for that loss? Who pays that?
I can't give you an answer. I think we have,
Well, there's a follow-up to it, but well, what I'm asking is who pays the difference? Well, who pays the difference and who's gonna collect and how you collect that money? Yeah, who's gonna pay for that difference if the market rate is 1,800 and people are, okay. And I didn't hear where Mary Ann said you traveled from. Was it Arlington?
These will be affordable housing for people of more limited income. The rents, as has been said, will be lower than market rate rents because the people that we're providing housing for have more limited income. The entire project will be set up with the knowledge that there will only be limited rents. So the project will gather enough outside funding to make sure that the project will be able to operate at the restricted rents. So there's really no loss of income. There's just an acknowledgement that the income is lower and we will make the project work with those lower incomes.
Dave, I have a question. So I think what I understood by the gentleman's question was the, will all one-bedroom apartments be the same price? Will all two bedrooms be the same price? Will all three bedrooms be the same price? Or is there, can someone get a one-bedroom apartment for 1,200 and one get it for 800? Or are they all the same?
Okay, that's not the question I heard, but I can answer that question. I would suggest that we try not to answer everything about everything today because we don't have all the answers and we've agreed we need to have ongoing dialogue. But if the people that are renting have different income criteria, then they can pay only different rents to be affordable. And so the rents will be different for what might appear to be identical apartments if they are set up for people with different income levels.
And I think by definition, that is affordable housing. It is based on what you make and what the federal government has deemed appropriate to pay.
No,
Nope, this is not
Let-
Section 8 at all. Very, very, very different.
I would only suggest that there's clearly a need for ongoing discussions within the Board of Selectmen about how to proceed here. We're here to support that, but there really is a series of ongoing discussions within the Board of Selectmen, I think, that have yet to
No, I was just
occur.
trying to clear up what I thought I heard the question was.
I'm not answering that. I'm just saying
know.
in general.
Okay, thank you.
So, I mean, it appears just on the way that we've all asked questions and answered that we're not prepared. I just, for the record, I am prepared to vote on it tonight, but we certainly don't have consensus and I'm absolutely open to additional information, any additional information that we can get to help us make the best decision. But I'm getting the sense if we were to do a under the table poll that we would not be willing to vote tonight. Is that correct?
Well, I think that even Dave mentioned that we should get more information before we go to planning and zoning, because we want to go with what they would hope to be their best package, correct? And we don't have that.
Okay.
So what if we went there with not their best package and they said no? Okay, online question?
Yes, this is Dan Lowney from Fowler Road. Just have a couple of comments relative to the project. A project this size and scope and complexity, I think, demands a full due diligence on the part of the town, consistent with what Mr. Mastriani was referring to early on. Impact statements on traffic, impact statements on the environmental infrastructure, schools, housing, safety, before it moves forward very far. Because without having those answers, even providing the information now to to planning and zoning, they will come up with a lot of answers, excuse me, a lot of the same questions. So without having let's say a full project pro forma disclosure before we move forward, I think we may be finding ourselves in a constant cycle of answering questions that pop up without having been vetted well in advance. The second point I'd like to make is that I think that this might be a good opportunity, once again, consistent with what Brett said earlier, to revisit what the best use of this property may be. I really endorse the idea that he presented about finding the possible alternative uses for it, finding out what the market value is, because in this real estate environment, who knows, there may be someone out there who will provide an opportunity that we don't know about yet, that could really make it a valuable turnaround for the town, rather than just a giveaway to the private organization. So I had to say, thank you.
Thank you. Question? Denise?
Denise Hawk from Maine's Crossing Road. So just I think a couple of questions slash statements. One, I just wanted to just reiterate again, just the request for as many questions as you have in advance so that the PINSA group has time to really get all the information together. So when we come to you, we can answer every question and concern that you have at the moment, so that we can feel like we're making some good progress forward. So if you could send us those questions. I think the second point is to, I've heard a few people talk about, having, looking for different uses of that property. But I think that as we look for different uses of that property, wouldn't that some of those ideas that I hear out there, wouldn't that have an even greater negative effect to the folks on Wrights Road in terms of if you create a resort or a shopping center or anything like that, it would have an even increased flow of traffic and all those other concerns. So to me, it seems if that truly is a concern about Wrights Road, then those wouldn't even be consideration if you're wanting to protect those citizens in that way. I know that we are trying to do our due diligence to try to do the best that we can for those neighbors as fellow citizens. And those are my only two thoughts.
Thank you. Anything else online?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Since Juliet's here, I'm gonna try to get this answered. So in the letter, it talked about the 3 different plots. And one of them's 42 acres, one's 8 acres, and I didn't write down the other one. And I know you can only subdivide once, right? Isn't that our rules with planning and zoning? So I'm wondering how this would work for those 10 acres out of these 3 parcels. Okay. So one is 42 acres. Yeah, I don't have the picture of it here.
Yeah, you do.
I don't have it where my lot lines are. So those two, so the one across the street, the 42 acres, why is that in the request? Isn't that 93-2332? Unless the GIS pulled up. No, 93-2332 map block lot is 42 acres and it's sold back in
Let me suggest that.
January
that's a
96 for
subject of a-
700,000.
That's a subject of a more detailed discussion. We did present the layout last time. It was the same layout as you had some years ago, and it was in the same properties that you had some years ago. Yeah, it was able to be figured out how it was going to be done. Then we will be able to figure it out again. We're not prepared to do that today. And one of the very easy solutions is just lease the property for a long period of time and you won't have to do any subdivision.
Okay,
So,
thank you. Go ahead.
I mean, I think at this point, we've already decided that, there's not gonna be a vote tonight. I think our commitment to Kinsa is that we formulate all of the questions that are left that were not answered tonight, ahead of time, allow you guys to do your due diligence, try and get as many answers as you can. And then why don't you guys approach us when you feel you have all the answers and we'll put it back on the agenda? Does that
Yeah.
sound?
It sounds great. But
reasonable.
on the town side, I'd like for us to get a market analysis of the property.
So I just think that we need, not opposed, I just think we need to be really careful if we're gonna entertain that area to private developers, we're gonna end up a heck of a lot potentially worse off for the people on Wrights Road
Oh,
and Winterchog than we are right now. Right now, we have a group of dedicated no-stow citizens who have the town's best interests at heart and are not gonna put something there that is potentially gonna be an eyesore or, listen, anything on that road is gonna impact your property for the people on Wrights Road. We get that. That's not,
right.
that, believe me. But I think we need to be really careful about whether are we in it to make money off the property and to sell it to somebody who is gonna make a profit for the town? Or are we in it to get something there that is as tasteful and respectful of the people in that area that we possibly can and still serve the purpose of having our seniors, our graduated students and, our regular working people a place to live. I mean,
Oh, I agree. I agree 100%. And I'm not saying we go out there and market it, but I don't know how we can represent the other 5,000 plus people in this community without knowing what value that really is. And just say we're looking at one entity to give that to without even knowing what the market
Yeah,
value is. I'm not saying we look at the market value and we're putting it on the auction block. I'm saying we should know what we're dealing with. So when the residents ask us, well, how much is that property worth? We can say it because we're taking out a chunk of that overall property.
So why don't we table? I can't hear you.
Would it be worth our while to see if we could get a second entrance off of Winnebago? Because I was thinking that you could come in off of Winnebago and it would almost be like effectively a loop to address the concerns of the people that there's only one way in and out.
I don't live up there, but I feel strongly that either an entrance or a loop has got to be, or obviously significant improvements to Wrights Road the way it is right now. And that was one of the questions that you guys did answer, is that certainly Wrights Road, if deemed necessary, would need to have improvements made in order to accommodate the traffic that's coming and going from there.
Yeah, any information to
It's gonna be one of the
Potentially
questions, that I put down
lessen the
for them.
impact on the resident.
Brian, you want to speak and just, go ahead, you can speak. We just have to move it along a little bit. Thanks. Well, because we have a long agenda after this part of the meeting.
Well, I
so-
understand. I think,
And we're not making a decision tonight, so we'll-
right. Anyways, it's Brian Rathbun, 263 Grindstone Hill Road. I just want to say a few things. One thing, it never ceases to amaze me that when there's a piece of land in town, somebody wants to build on it or they want to do something with it. That land is being used. There's animals up there, there's critters up there, there's people that walk on that land, there's people that live right near that land. Have they been asked about this? Probably not. I bet they heard it through the grapevine. I really don't like the idea of giving away a site to the KNSA. They have land down in Clark's Falls. I'd like to see what's going to happen with that. Let's see what they do with that before we even entertain taking it to the zoning board. The zoning board has voted no, we should keep the land. the other things I didn't like is all land is valuable in North Stonington. It's not just sitting there, and there's a value to it. I don't care if it's a piece of land big as that table, it's still valuable. There's something that land is providing for. People come into this town and that's what they think. They think, oh, North Stonington's got a lot of land. Well, this whole thing was pushed on us by the state of Connecticut. And even the state of Connecticut now is realizing that their 830G of affordable housing, they just set up a group to meet, to revisit some of the things they had for affordable housing. It came with Bill 998. It's now a Public Act 23-207. And they're going to examine the need for affordable housing in Connecticut and propose solutions to meet that need. I would say our town should get together and say, not where, but why? Why do we have to provide affordable housing? I keep hearing it's for our kids, it's for the seniors. I don't believe that, not what I've been reading from the state of Connecticut, because Section 8 is included in it. All those things are included in it. And if somebody wants to double check, they can double check, because I've been checking and following it. I plan on writing to the state of Connecticut. I bet you half of them haven't even been to this town. When I was growing up, I asked my father, I'd like to live in this town. They told me how to do it. You go out, you get a job, you work. I had to work 2 jobs all my life and then I went home and I took care of my mother. I sold my house. I took care of my mother and I paid her taxes for her because she was going to have to move. It's not the responsibility of the whole town to take care of your kids and take care of your parents. It's your responsibility. I think it's about time that we really wake up and do the common sense of that was taught in this town years ago. We want to build, 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 build. Pretty soon, you know what? That's what they said in Groton. They want to build, 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 build. How about asking the people that live on the places that everybody wants to build? I think it's very important to get their input. I've talked to many farmers. They don't want to sell their land or have their land taken to just build, 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 build. That's exactly what happened in Groton. There used to be a farming town down there. Anyways, I don't want to get too riled up, but I will not be in favor of giving any more land to any entity. Affordable Housing Committee wasn't notified of any of these questions or anything else. And I'm on Affordable Housing Committee. So I guess it doesn't matter. We can disregard any other committee. We'll go right to the selectmen and try to put them on the spot. I'm glad. I hope you don't have any vote on that. I hope you have a private discussion. Although I guess there's a rule that all 3 of you get together, then it's got to be a
There
meeting.
will be no private discussions, Brian.
But think about it. This town is very valuable to all of us. It's very valuable to the animals that live here and every single bug, mosquito, tick, or whatever it is out there. That land supports something. And I'm not going to support bringing in a bunch of people that the state of Connecticut says, you're going to have these people come in your town and that's it. I'm willing to fight for our town.
No, thank you, Brian. Okay, we're ready to move on? Okay, that's the end of this session tonight on affordable housing. I'm sure we'll be talking to you many times in the future. Thank you all for attending. Feel free to stay in this warm room for another hour and a half. Number 7, resolution adopting the hazard mitigation and climate adaptation plan update. You have this on the table. Just to give you a quick synopsis of what this is. This was approved in 2005, 2012, 2018. And they contacted the town about 6 months ago to see if there's any changes. We made no significant changes to it. And they're asking us to just rubber stamp it and have it be resolved that this is our current Southeastern Connecticut Hazardous Mitigation Plan Update and Resilient Connecticut 2.0. I told them I have addressed it at the meeting this evening, and all we'll do is take some quick discussion, a vote, and be done with it and move on, hopefully. But feel free. Any questions, any discussion on this? No, you're good?
Absolutely, I'll
Sorry.
second.
Motion to adopt.
So Brett, motion to adopt, and Nicole seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 3-0, move along. Transfer station discussion, transfer station compacting plan. We've got both Donnie and Alan here. They're gonna do a presentation on something we talked about a while back in a previous meeting about changing things at the transfer station, going to compactors and so on. In the long run, it's a big savings to the town. They're gonna ask us tonight on the possibility of maybe moving this project up a bit and getting to it sooner instead of later. If we approve to do that, we can go to the board plan of the Board of Finance and see if they have an appetite to do it also. Okay, Donnie, Alan, whoever's gonna do it.
So this is a presentation I actually gave a couple months ago, I think quite a few months ago now. There was a few changes to it. As of July 1st, we've seen a few changes with the billing, of course, and the price has gone up a little bit from March. So we had to change a few things in it. But this is the transfer station. These are the
Donnie, can you speak, sorry, Alan, can you speak a little bit closer? I'm sorry.
Yep. So these are the trucks we use right now. The green would be the backup we have in case the red one goes down. The two walking floor trailers we use to swap out for the garbage. So right now we rent a compactor. It's hauled by Casella. It's hauled by Casella. We pay a rental fee of $216 a month for the compactor and the containers. The hauling fee was $190. It is now gone up to $425 per pull. We usually have 2 a week, approximately 46,792, and that was a year, right, Christine? Yep, that was a year. It's a 40-yard container, like I said, usually twice a week. This is how it looks from above and below. This is how we haul and pack garbage. You throw it down into the trailer. We use the excavator to pack the trailer, and of course the truck to pull it in a 100-yard walking floor trailer. This is how we use Calmary to do scrap metal. We get a portion of the money back. We don't get all of it, of course, because they have the container sitting there the whole time. It's usually a couple containers a month. I don't remember. I have to look back quick how many we usually do. In the proposed plan was to buy 2 containers to do it ourselves. Yarrington's in town. We don't have to go far, and we would get all the money back for the little bit of fuel we'd use to get it there. It's probably 15 minutes away, to be honest, in the big truck. So the containers, the 2 30-yard open tops for the scrap metal are $7,101 each, or $10 each. We would get 1 40-yard open top container, which is a little bit bigger, of course, to go with the compactors for the garbage that we proposed before, to take the big bulky items like the little tykes, outside toys that might not fit in the compactor without cutting it up, or like big chunks of carpet. We could throw in that. It wouldn't fill up very often. I've talked to a couple of the guys. If say we get 1 little tykes thing a month, we'd cut it in half or 3-4 pieces, put it in the compactor. Wouldn't even have to dump the container. It would just be there for big items if we did, or a big clean out or something somebody had. We would get 2 34-yard contained containers for the trash. One comes with a power pack. We only have to buy 1 power pack. The other one would just be the container. And then that would be just for garbage alone. Then we would buy 2 40-yard compacting containers with a 3-yard compacting unit that the containers back up to exactly what we have now. We would just own it at that point. Then it would be ours. We wouldn't have to deal with Casella at all, whether a container gets broken when we move it, or not that that's happened since I've been here, but anything like that of the case. And then we would just need to get a truck. We priced out a couple different trucks. It would be a 10-wheeler because we're not hauling crazy amounts of weight, just the containers, and they're only hauling like 8 to 9 ton on top of the container weight. And we could do that with a 10-wheeler, as I've figured out with talking to everybody. and the installation costs on the containers, on the new container for the garbage, because that'd be the only one we really have to change, or to build a funnel to funnel it down to the container and put a rail system in and some electrical work. So the total would be $388,948.
Can I ask you one question on that?
Yep.
I just missed it. The 3-yard recycling compactor, what was the reason for that one?
So right now we use a 3-yard, that feeds the containers. We stayed with a 3-yard only for big cardboard boxes. I mean, they get broke down, but they're still, sometimes they get stuck every once in a while. We could go with a 2-yard, but it would just we'd have to press the button more often. Right now.
So you're talking about the hopper itself?
Yeah, the
Okay.
hopper itself holds 3 yards. The container is a 40-yard.
Okay,
The only reason we can't get 40 yards for garbage is because they're self-contained.
Right.
So no liquids are spilled on the ground, none of that. It's all self-contained in the unit. And then when you go to dump, you would just pull a plug and they would all stay at the incinerator at that
Okay.
point.
Alan, what's the lifespan of a container?
Depends on how beat up they get, to be honest.
So average?
It really depends on everything. Could be the salt on the road. It could be,
Can you get 10 years out of a container?
I would hope we get well more than 10
You get
years.
Okay.
I would definitely see. I would hope to get 20. If we had a truck at that point, we wouldn't be moving it with the loader like we do now. When you start moving them with equipment, it gets banged up. It's not.
Without this initial expense, it wouldn't be something that like every 2 years we're starting to replace containers and stuff.
No, I would hope not at all.
Okay.
We're not dropping. I've seen a couple 30-yard containers at like different factories where they move big piece of metal and they put them in when they drop them in off forklifts or anything like that. The iron we take or the aluminum we take doesn't weigh enough. The heaviest thing I think I've ever put in is a fridge, and it's not going to hurt the container. The
Okay.
metal in there is definitely strong enough to take
when I
that.
worked in waste management, 20 years, we have some that were
Yeah.
there. What's the warranty on the compactor itself?
I didn't get through with that right away. There is a warranty on it. I don't remember. I'd have to look it up back in when I talked to them and priced it out. But there was a warranty
So there
on.
won't be any repair costs within the first few years.
I would hope not.
And
it
is
is a
there a
brand-
service contract with that?
So the only thing they told me to change, that you would have to change, would be a service contract. And they honestly said if we have a mechanic on staff, all it is changing oil. That's it.
Okay.
So-
Hydraulics.
On the compactor itself, I've been here for 14 years. I started as a single stream, 2 years being here, so 12 years. I've had Casella come out, well, then it was William Waste one time, and then I had Scott Haynes fix it twice in that amount of time, so.
Great.
It doesn't get a lot of use. It goes back and forth. That's all. It's a pretty simple machine.
Right.
So the only things that break down on it usually might be a diode or one of the switches, but it's nothing major. I have never even had a hydraulic fix, so.
Wow, perfect. Thank you.
So where were we?
Potential savings.
Yes. So if we did purchase this, we could at that point get rid of the 2 trucks, 2 trailers. We actually have a storage trailer out back that we'd get rid of because at that point we have no way to move it. It doesn't get used a whole lot right now. So we could get rid of that hopefully with a return of $60,000. With the compactors and the 10-wheeler truck, we would have 8 less tires on the road, 2 less axles to take care of, maintain, grease, all of that. We'd save a lot of time, hours on the excavator, wear and tear, extra, like the fuel should get cut down because the excavator's not running as well. The oil changes on that, the tires on that, all of that, that's all wear and tear that we use. The smaller truck would hopefully help the staff get in and out. With being a smaller truck, they'll usually put a couple of walking floor trailers in at the incinerator, in and out fast. They take a little bit longer to unload, and hopefully the trucks could dump faster and get in and out and back to the site. I have to read this as I go. Yeah, so revenue was selling the 5 pieces, sorry, with 60,000. And the capital money plan for the transfer station was the 57,450. Yeah, 117,450 would be proposed to use for the open top containers in the truck. That whole thing doesn't include replacing 29 in the future, the other walking floor trailer, because we've only planned on 1 right now. So the funding source, we found out we could use some LoSiP money of $108,679 we have coming to us. which would be for the fixed equipment at the transfer station. So the compacting units, all the containers that go with them, the only thing we cannot use it for is the open tops because they're not bolted to the facility, and the truck because of course it doesn't get bolted there. So the capital funds we have would from C205 is $81,286.50. And hopefully the $10,000 for the bottle fund money would also go towards all of that. So the additional appropriation would be going for would be $190,000 from the undesignated.
Alan, quick
Now-
question, the sale of the two Mack trucks for 60.
Yep.
And then the sale of the 5 pieces of equipment for another 60.
No, it's all 60 for the 5. I just guesstimated.
Yep,
On
so,
all of that, I talked to a couple of people of like what they're going for. And hopefully, I mean, the box trailer's not worth a whole lot. We don't use it at the moment, so that would just, and we don't have a way to move it if we get rid of the trucks.
so the
that-
the revenue from selling the 5 pieces of equipment, does that not include the 2 Mack trucks and the 2 walking floor trailers?
That does include
It does, so
That
it's
includes
$60
$60,000.
for the sale of what we're no longer gonna use,
Exactly.
not 120.
not
No.
100, so 60. That was just going off at the time in March when I had got that number. The auction, that was what auction numbers were for prices of
Okay.
trucks and trailers at that time.
So technically, that $60,000.
Yep.
Would help offset the 190 that we are
Yes.
proposing to come out of undesignated.
The only thing is we can't go to get that money back until after all of this is in
Yep.
place and running.
Yep, okay. I just wanted to understand kind of like the bottom line.
Do you guys have a rough estimate of what our hauling cost is? So man hours, fuel,
For
like a turnaround for the recycle. So if they're charging $425.
Yep.
To haul, what's our cost?
we haven't
you
figured that number out exactly right now, because I don't know what the truck would get for fuel mileage. I could roughly figure out hours by the GPS and stuff like that. It
'Cause-
would depend on a lot, to be honest.
Cycles.
Right.
We're still doing our own trash.
Yeah.
Trash turnaround, some days is an hour and a half, some days is 2 hours. You could be up there for 4 hours if they don't have enough room for the trucks up there in Lisbon. But most of the time, it's about an hour and a half to 2 hours
Turnaround.
to turn around on the trucks. And, that's the only thing we're hauling. We're not hauling our metals, we're not hauling our recyclables, which we do, with this truck. The plus thing to it too, is that bulky waste, it's coming up again. Bulky waste is gonna close at some point, and at least now you've already got the infrastructure in place, you just need to buy another container. And then you can start doing your own, because bulky waste is gonna be $425 a load just to haul, not including what the weight is. So it does also includes a fuel surcharge. So basically the bills went from $1,200 a month to $2,600 a month now. That I just paid last month was the first month of the fuel surcharge and the other stuff that in.
Yeah. This is-
We have no control.
Yerington's is technically is in North Stonington. It's a North Stonington business.
Yep.
I just love the fact that we're giving business to somebody in North Stonington.
So that 425, Brett, is just for them to pull a container out, go dump it and bring it back
Right.
on top of the 190, and the fuel charges changes monthly. I've never seen the same amount per month.
Yeah, no, they
It
usually are.
always changes.
It just, I wanted to be clear that we're not saving $425 each run, technically.
I mean, I wouldn't think we would spend $300 a month on fuel. I would hope.
Yeah, very good.
Alan, I think you skipped a page. Can you go back a page?
Yep. So the timeline for this whole
I'll go
thing-
back one page. You skipped that page.
No, we did it.
We talked about the
Okay.
LoSiP capital funds and
LoSiP.
additional,
Yeah.
okay, never mind.
Take his temperature.
So the timeline for this would be the town meeting to approve, required. Town meeting would be required. The truck takes 6 months minimum to get. The LoSiP plan doesn't come in until March, so that would then be the project would be starting. The Mack truck and trailers we talked about can't be sold until everything at the transfer station in place and running. So this was a summary of all of this. The containers being $22,445, the compacting containers being $91,503, the truck being $250,000, installation for the wiring and the rail system the container rides on, and mounting the 3-yard compactor for recycling. Hopefully that'll be a lot easier than I'm thinking. The total for that was $388,948. The funding was $108,679 from the LoSiP. The capital funds was $81,286. The bottle bill money would be $10,000, and the additional appropriation would be at $199, so that equals a $389,965. The sale of the equipment would be $60,000, and hopefully the annual savings of B27, 26 would be $46,000 a year. And additional appropriations will return saving within 3 years. And then of course,
Christine, we have money out of the undesignated that is due to come back into the undesignated at some point. Yes, so right now we have an additional appropriation for the steep projects. We just completed the actual construction on those this past week. So we'll be, once we get the invoices, we'll pay those off. We'll submit them for the state for reimbursement, so we'll be able to get that back. And we're still waiting for the school project. Yeah, I think that's the one that that's the big one, but that's the one that could take another 5 to 7 years. We don't know. All right, so where does that put us with the undesignated? So without givebacks from the fiscal year that just ended, because we don't have those numbers, we still have over $2 million in the undesignated fund.
so there was a lot of additional uses for the truck, storm cleanup, bulky waste, as we saw in the other piece. If we got to bulky waste hauling out, another 40-yard container to fit on this truck is only $8,000 instead of a whole nother trailer we'd have to buy. That of course just went up, and that just got tossed out. Trying to go for this, or we already moved the money for this. It could be used for anything really around town. Like I said, the brush cleanups, the scrap metal will get a little return on more than we do now. It's not a huge amount, but it's definitely more than we get now. And there's no rental on the container because we don't.
Is that truck, we do stuff with the school. They do cleanouts, and we bring up dumpsters and drop for them. So it's not just used for our department, it's used to help other departments. When the town hall needed stuff cleaned out, or we have to go to other places in town to help them out with cleaning out, we drop the dumpster for other departments to put their stuff in, and then we bring it up the transfer station and go through it and put where it needs to go here or there, because we've done it several times. We did it here with the small one that we have now. So it would also include helping other departments out, not just ourselves.
Thank you. So we're looking at a vote by the Board of Selectmen to send this to the Board of Finance for review, correct?
Yes, so we are looking for two additional appropriations. So the first is B 27.00 LoSiP current from undesignated funds. So that would be $59,816 for unspent funds from FY 23 and also additional funds from FY 24. When we put the budget together, we thought we were getting $49,000 for LoSiP. Once the budget was approved, the amount was increased to 73,000. So no matter what we're doing with LoSiP, we're going to need to do a vote at some point to move money to be spent that we will get reimbursed from the state. The plan is to do this at a town meeting, that we also do approve the LoSiP 5-year plan. So Donnie and Alan will do a full presentation of the whole 5-year plan, but this would be the project that we're doing for the first year. So additional appropriation request and the approval of the 5-year plan. And then we also need $190,000 moved into C 2.05 transfer station compactor upgrade from the undesignated fund. And so we need these funds up front so we can place the order for the truck, which would, again, as Alan said, take 6 months to get here.
So hopefully by the time we call a town meeting, we'll have more reconciliation on the funds from this past fiscal year. So we'll know what additional money is added to the undesignated fund, which could be a decent amount of money, correct?
Were these LoSiP funds slotted for anything, road work or anything?
So the projects that are on the LoSiP 5-year plan right now are actually being sought for other state funds. We had Lantern Hill
on there for, right, Lantern Hill? For,
Where us and Preston are the two finalists for a grant.
so we're
cover.
trying to get a trip grant to do that project. So.
But we don't know about that yet.
We don't know about that yet. But though the funds to do that well exceed the LoSiP money. It's over $300,000 to do that, and we're only getting 49 to 73,000 a year. So they're still working on the second, third, fourth, and fifth year of the plan.
If we don't get that grant, there's no way we can do it with the LoSiP funds we have. We'd have to push it off.
I just want to make sure we're not pushing something else off that was slated to be done with our LoSiP funds if we utilize this. And then, I mean, the other question I was gonna have is, why can't we look at this for, from some of our steep money? Why
Um,
can't we include that?
So the only thing that's left to buy is the truck, and you can't buy a truck with steep money.
Do we have that? I was looking through the docs and I didn't see that as,
Let me get the right folder.
No, she's got it because we looked at that. That was something we talked about.
and the reason I brought it, as you look through steep and they talk about what is allowable, and they reference waste disposal projects, recreation, economic development projects.
So you can't use steep grants for furniture, fixtures, or equipment, and a truck is that. So we could use it for the same things we can use the LoSiP money for the things that aren't moving from the facility, but anything that's not permanently attached, we can't.
So what about the compactor?
The compactor is attached, so we're using so in the spreadsheet that was in your packet, we're planning to use LoSiP funds for the 2 compacting containers and the recycling compactor with the 2 containers and the guides for the containers. So that's the concrete stuff.
So we'd want to do that out of LoSiP and not look at steep for that.
Yes.
And what's the reason? I'm just curious.
Well, one thing, LoSiP's money we have, Steve's money we have to apply for, we may not get. So if we want to move this project forward, I would think it's probably more likely to happen on the LoSiP funds with this money we already have from the state.
And we had other things in mind for Steve. So that's part of it.
As we'll be getting to in a shortly on our
Right.
agenda, so.
That's why I brought it up now, so get some answers.
I think part of it too is also, in my mind, is the timing. So we'll find out on, March 1st, what the official LoSiP allocation is for the year. We know it's been projected for the 73,000. It should be the 73,000, but you can't spend it until you hit that March 1st date.
Don't we find out steep earlier than that?
So you get awarded steep in September, but then you have to work with your overseeing agency, and that takes a really long time usually. So we don't usually have that ready to go until after that point.
Any additional questions?
So we're looking to get that ordered, and when would we be operational at the transfer station?
Most likely not until June or July, because we have to wait until the LoSiP approve. So when you get the approval of how much you can spend for LoSiP, then you have to submit your project to the state, and the turnaround time is usually a month. So pretty much once a month, they say, you submit your project in, and then they say, yes, North Stonington can use X amount of dollars for this project. Go ahead and start your project. So at that point, we would be able to order all the containers. So Alan, I think you said it was,
like I said, minimum of 6 months on the truck with the body being installed on it. It was 12 weeks on the containers, which if we already had to go ahead in, say, April, and everything was a go, we could move, say, the trash over to the middle bay that we don't use right now, or we do for ACs. We could move them over, use trash there, start the project with putting the rail system in, getting the power run over, and then when the container showed up, it's literally just bolt it to the floor, hook the wires up, and roll the containers in. That would be the plan.
What do we have left in ARPA? Do we have? I know that's unsettled right now, but
Yeah, so I think we have around 62, 63,000
Oh,
ARPA
okay.
funds. But again, yes, that's unsettled at this point.
I thought we had 90 something. Hold on.
We just added in the money from the EEC, right? So it's probably closer to 90 something.
I'm opening my spreadsheet.
Do we have a date in mind of when we want to go to a town meeting and with,
We have to go to town meeting, as we did the last time for a number of reasons. We have
Yeah.
some ordinance changes. We have LoSiP funding. We have typically annually, we give the first selectman and the board of selectmen, the opportunity to borrow $1 million if there's a catastrophe, those kind of things.
And we also have the resident trooper contract.
Resident trooper contract renewal. So there's gonna be multiple questions, probably looking at maybe September-ish.
September or October.
okay.
So we currently have $90,326 that have not been allocated.
I
You
forgot
know,
about that remaining EDC balance, so.
That's the difference.
Okay, so do we want to move this to the Board of Finance or not?
I'll make a motion to move the proposed plan to really kind of revamp our transfer station processes to the Board of Finance for the appropriation of 190,000 and change.
Okay, I'll second.
Okay, so we have first and a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so
So we'll
Future
ask for that
Board
to
of-
be on the Board of Finance agenda for this.
that's a week from tomorrow, correct?
Yep, so I'll correspond with them.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your work, guys.
Okay, we have, thank you, Donnie. Thank you, Alan. Thanks for hanging around waiting. NDA transfers. We've got no steep. All right, sorry about that. You know what it is, Brett brought up steep already. I just thought we were done with it. We're not.
You were hoping.
I was hoping. Take this. Okay, so we talked about different options for steep. I think that we know that the school had talked about possibly using some steep money to rework fields, irrigate fields. We have a $500,000 max that we can use with a 20% match. So basically it gives us 600,000. Is that correct, Christine? Or is it 500,000 counting the match?
We can ask for 500,000 in funds, so the project can be
600,000. Okay. So with that said, the school was, I thought they'd be here this evening unless they're online, are they? No? Okay. So the school looked at doing something with the field as far as irrigation. Brad talked about something with possibly rec fields. And from the town hall side, we looked at redoing a parking lot out on this side of the building, as we saw tonight, how we can get crowded quickly. We also talked about a new roof on the two-story wing. Donnie and Alan went up on the roof of this building, and it was fine. It was redone when the rest of the school was done. So this the roof on this two-story wing, which is we're gonna have to do eventually. The parking lot around the greenhouse area, you can't probably see, but there's 7 lighting poles on that. There's 3 on the building side and 4 along the outside of the parking lot. And we talked about HVAC, air conditioning and heating for this room. How appropriate. So that's where we are. We have some quotes that came in. I had CLA do that plan, which they had already done an original plan for this building, so it wasn't too hard for them to do it. We get 37 spots of parking if we do this plan with two handicap parking spots with 7 lights. Now, we know that they talked about voting in the winter, voting in meetings in the winter, you get out and stock in the parking lot. This would give us an illuminated parking lot with 37 spots. That's number one. And that price came in and he told me he was going to pad the price because he was just using round numbers, as Brett would probably know from being in business before, that you always round up and make sure that you've got enough money so you don't want to come up with a number. So he's got it up at 250, project estimate 239, but that has a contingency of 28,000. And he pretty much rounded up all the other numbers. Talking to Don today, he felt that this project probably could be done for under $200,000. So that includes lighting and parking lot and gravel and everything that's on the list of, did you send them this packet
Yeah.
with the numbers? Okay. The roof came in, she's using for a fan. The roof came in at, just a little over $200,000. And I guess the question would be, does the new roof have to be done now or not? How do we, as you say, Nick, how do we prioritize these things, right? So you got the HVAC, you've got which we're waiting for numbers. Alan's father, Burnside Plumbing, looked at doing mini splits in this room, and he felt that the room is so big with different elevations of ceiling heights and the number of people that can be in this room, which is the 75 people, that 75, 98-degree heat is sitting in the room. The mini splits would be expensive because we need an extraordinary amount of them. So the alternative would be to look at the rooftop system and try to come up with Alan, can you, I feel like a teacher telling you, don't talk while I'm talking. Alan, can you come up and explain what the outcome was of looking at this room for heating and cooling and what you came up with when you had, your audit over?
So we had actually looked at there's a whole lot because the ceiling height changes in this room so much, and behind us, of course, the ceiling drops down. It takes a lot of cooling to cool this room. And I was talking to my father actually last night about it. They say each body roughly is 300 BTUs. So you have to add tonnage for every 40 people. You have to add a ton of cooling to bring it down from what we figured out, roughly. So it helps. It kind of hurts the unit count. The unit count goes up the more people the room holds. And I just got in contact yesterday with MCOR. They had showed up on the 1st, and they're waiting on a thermostat. So hopefully that'll fix it. If that does fix it, that would definitely be a plus. If not, we would be looking into a new unit to replace what's up there, instead of going with a mini split style, because it'd be so many, the head count in here would be huge for the mini split style because of the wall changes and the ceiling changes and everything like that.
How many ton unit is up there now?
I don't know.
And is it the old, is it R22 or is it,
It
have
is
we
R22.
upgraded? So it is,
It is
so
most
even
likely.
again,
I was
Okay.
told there's a drop in to put in it. I don't know if you have to change both the indoor coil as well as the outdoor coil. I mean, if that thermostat doesn't do it, the outside would definitely have to get changed anyways. So the only talk would be is if you could clean the coil on the inside and drop a new refrigerant in it or not.
okay.
So there's still questions to be had on the heating system. Now, if MCOR came in and they could fix it with new thermostats, and we thought they were gonna fix it before, and here we are today sweating again.
Yeah.
So what's the chances that these thermostats can actually do the job so we can say, okay, we don't have to do that part of the project?
That was one of the conversations I had with NCOR. With just looking upstairs, we found a trip breaker upstairs, and I don't know why. And I was hoping when NCOR got here, when we left them a message the first time, you need to call me when you're going to show up. I need to be there with you. I want to go over what we found. And he had also found a breaker when he had come the first time. And I was kind of upset with them. And I said, I need to be there the next time you're coming because I want to meet the guy there and know exactly what's going on. So he's supposed to call me the next time they show up. I've been watching this place like crazy, trying to find them in case they decide not to call me. At least I see the truck pulling and figure out what's going on.
I see the truck all the time.
I
out
mean,
there.
but we spend a lot of money, and it seems like we've been having this conversation for months. you
Yeah.
know.
I mean, I'm hoping the thermostat fixes it from what we had found out roughly playing around upstairs was the thermostat down here works. We're hoping it's a thermostat in the outdoor unit. Maybe it's low on Freon, or the thermostat thinks it's low on Freon, or the switch is bad in it, and that's what I'm hoping they're going to get. The lady in the office just said a thermostat, and I said, well, what kind of thermostat? She's like, I don't know. I just know a thermostat. So that's why I want to meet him here and know what he was doing. And I was kind of adamant about me being here when they come.
But we won't have an answer to that prior to applying for the steep grant, correct? Or we will.
When are you applying?
It's got to be in by the 18th of August.
Hoping this week the thermostat will be in, and then we'll know. I mean, they came the 1st, so we're already 6 days in on them ordering it. Hopefully they order it the day.
I mean, if we didn't have to go that route, and we can do the roof and the parking lot, and those two add up to about 400,000, then we could put money towards the school fields, if that was a request by the Board of Ed. I thought they'd be here tonight, actually, but they're not,
I
so.
think it was two, wasn't it 2 something? 2:30.
But the thing is, they also have access to funds that we don't have. They have, grant funding opportunities that we don't have. They also have the non-lapsing account, which we don't have.
Well, we have on designated.
But that's,
Similar.
it is similar, but they, undesignated is, it's the safety, it's a saving bank for the town. It's the rainy day fund for the town. That's not what the undesignated, what the non-lapsing account is. A non-lapsing account is just additional monies paid by the taxpayer that they can put towards non-budgeted items. So it is and it isn't. So put it this way, if there's a flood and we lose the bridge again, they're gonna be looking at undesignated. They're not gonna be looking at giving us a non-lapsing account to fix it. So with that said, I would like to take care of this building and get this building's become something that we probably didn't know it was gonna become, which is our main meeting space. It's an area we do our voting now. Yes, we do have a tenant, which would help her too, but that's not part of the equation, it's an after effect that yes, she'd benefit from it. But I think if we can pick up a well-lighted parking lot with 37 spaces, and we know that most people now seem to be coming in this back door.
But
Go ahead.
no, well, I'll wait till.
No, I'm good. There's no, obviously it's something I would like to have done. I think also it would create curb appeal from Route 2. So when you're coming Route 2 and you come in the first part of town from the Rotary, it doesn't look so great. You get down past going towards Foxwoods and it doesn't look so great. Because of things that are on Route 2. I think around the schools and around the village, we've tried to keep this as attractive as possible. I think this just would be good curb appeal for the school.
I can tell you, I personally don't have any appetite for $250,000 for the parking in the front here. Especially now, before we do our community conversation of what this whole other area would look like and what we plan on utilizing it for. I think, I understand that it's money from the state if we get it, and that's great, and it's money that, so we're not really on the hook for the 250,000, but I think there's other areas of the community that could utilize this more and have a direct quality of life impact on our residents, and that's what this program is supposed to be for.
Well, it's this, we have people who vote, we have people that go to a meeting, so, but, all right, so answer your question. If we have till August 18th to apply for something, what is it you want to apply for?
So, I mean, from what we have here, like I said, I would have liked to get some more information or quote on the rec facilities and the fields down there, because they are in very rough shape. But my top would be the roof. But I also think that we're not looking at this whole project or this whole building as a whole. So we have peeling paint, we have on the outside, we have peeling out there. So we're gonna spend $250,000 on a parking lot for people to park, yet we don't have the money to maintain what this is. I'd rather, if this is what we're looking to do and spend it on this building, really put in-depth analysis on what we need to do to make this room more usable and set up. But my top from what we have in front of us would be the roof, HVAC, and then
Well, we don't have an HVAC number, and
but-
we might be able to fix it with just thermostats.
but we might not, and we don't know. So the roof's 250. The school's asking for 230, which you can say they have other sources, but it's all town money to begin with.
But they do have other sources.
And we do too. I mean, there's other grants, but if you look at the history of the STEEP grant and what other communities do, I mean, they are pretty broad in what they look at. And it's shocking to me. They put business incubators in, they put farms in, they do crazy stuff with money. A town just got $430,000, put a business incubator in with farming and agricultural education within their community. I understand we're utilizing it, and I kind of feel like we rushed to it, and I know we at least had more time this year
Well, we
over
didn't think
last
we were
year.
gonna get it this year, and then they came out and we've had basically less than four weeks to put this together.
Right, and I agree, but that's why I'd rather do the roof some sort of the HVAC and then look at the school irrigation.
The school's not even here to present it.
But they already did, didn't they?
I told they had to come in tonight and give us a number.
Hi, Bob.
Yes.
This is Stephanie Mastriani. I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared to speak on behalf of the Board of Ed, but I am here and I have been listening, and I'd love to advocate on behalf of this particular project.
Okay.
I can try and answer any questions that you might have. Like I
Hang
said,
on Stephanie, hold on one second, because we've had Donnie sitting at the podium waiting, so hang on a second.
So
Okay.
just maybe help you guys a little bit. The grass across the street doesn't cost you any money. The parking lot, the way it is, doesn't cost you any money. The heating and air conditioning on this building costs you a lot of money. Costs us a lot of man hours. Myself and Alan included have been over here numerous times, week after week after week after week. And that heating and cooling system, not just the cooling, but also the heating system, is so far out of date that upgrades would cost a lot of money. That's why I suggested that we go with mini splits. Put mini splits in, because that will control this room and the superintendent's office, because those are the two most used rooms in the building. And that's why I would suggest that you would, my opinion, the heating and air conditioning is costing you a lot of money because of these run 24/7 on electricity, and they're not doing their job. And the man hours that we put over here, I did a report, I do an annual report on man hours, and this building far exceeded every other place, every other department in town as far as man hours. But granted, we had a lot of demolition going on too, so we're here for those meetings and coming on site for the demolition guys when that was going on. But I'm telling you, you spend a lot of money on this building. I don't know the exact numbers. Christine probably has how much we spent in just repairs on the heating and air conditioning system. It's pneumatic, it's by air. There's one compressor that's down in the boiler room that runs the whole building for air. Mice are in here, mice chew through the lines. Those guys have to find that stuff when it happens to try to get it to work. And it's just so inefficient that that's one of the reasons why we suggested we went with mini splits, to save you guys a lot of money. And that's just my suggestion, and it's coming from the inside, because we see it on a daily basis.
So do we have a number on the mini splits to do the,
We have a what?
do we have the number for the
We
mini
have the
split?
number on the superintendent's office, and we're waiting on the number for this component here. I got a number coming for you. Me and Alan met with B&W today. We walked through the area about the parking lot out there. They'll have a number for you for that. And then you have the number on the other thing you requested.
What's the number on the mini splits in the central office?
30,000?
17,000,
How much?
17.
17,000 there.
And that's for how many?
That's to do that whole office. That's the.
How many mini
So
splits?
that'd be
It's in
three.
your packet.
It's right here.
3?
Yes.
Did we look at that? There's nothing from Eversource for us because we're a community,
Nothing,
town?
there's things, but not massive savings.
Okay. And I have to agree with Donnie, the efficiency, once I switched over from my 3.5 ton unit to mini splits, and my energy for heat and electric
Correct.
went down.
The mini splits not only do your AC, but they also do your heat. So we could eliminate that part of the building for even heat. This building also, this part of the building also.
And this 17 does not include the electrician, so I don't know how much that would be.
So let's say it's 20 and 3 mini splits. So does that mean that this would be 60 for this room then?
I don't have a number for that, Bob. I'd be guessing Alan would probably be, what do you ask off the top of your head?
When do we have to have the
What's
information to the grant writer? By Friday?
Friday
to-
at the latest.
At the latest to get,
This Friday?
Yes,
yes.
the grant
due in by
application
the
is due to the
18th.
state on the 18th, which is a week from Friday.
So I'm always in the mindset of like, we have to do the must-haves, like we have to do the things, as Donnie is saying, that are costing us money. Although I love the renderings and the idea of the parking out there, I don't know if it rises to the level of top
And it
priority.
could be next year's.
Yeah,
cheap
and I
stuff.
would like to see what the larger vision for this entire property is for the community conversation. I, as you all can imagine, put the HVAC system at the top of my priority. Um, but, more so, we're talking about, we're talking about 2 months of uncomfortable heat. But the savings that I'm hearing that will come from putting a more efficient system in this area, which we are using on a regular basis now, for me, that would be a top
And
priority.
we've been hoping to get it fixed for, I think we've been talking about it
Yeah.
for 2 months.
Yeah, now maybe a new thermostat for $79.99 is gonna solve our problem and we can save ourselves $60,000. But that kind of would get my vote right now. Obviously, we need to move on trying to get as accurate, but that we're talking $60,000, right? We have a total of potentially 500.
Right.
Well,
so
we don't know
have
it's
to-
60. We know it's 20 for there. And could it be 60 for here? It could be, might be more.
Seems like a lot, but it could be.
Maybe it's 50, maybe it's 40. But so if you're saying the appetite for you is, why don't you put your things in Friday? We get all the numbers and then by Friday, just have to submit what we can. But so you put the HVAC at the top.
Yes.
And what's your second thing? And again, the parking lot can wait. That doesn't cost us any money. But what will cost us money is if the roof fails, that'll cost us money.
And
And
that's, I
what's
keep
the-
thinking of Gary in the back of my head saying that we're not looking at all the expense here, and the roof is a huge one that I'd hate to have to come up with
And what's
quickly.
that quote?
to.
Yeah, I think that I would put the roof second as well.
Okay, so we'll get the numbers of HVAC, we do the roof, and let's say that for some reason that adds up to 300,000 between electrician, the material we need to do the roof and do the HVAC. That leaves us, what, 200,000? Okay. Stephanie, did you want to speak at this point?
Sure, Bob, I'm happy to try and answer questions that you might have about the project, but I want to apologize for any misunderstanding. I think that if the board chair understood that she needed to be here tonight, she would have been. I was under the impression that you had the numbers that you needed based on our preliminary field study. But what I want to talk about, I think, is our non-lapsing account and how it's used. So in asking for that 200.
Yeah.
Stephanie, I don't know if you can hear me, but we lost you.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Oh, good. I don't know what happened. So I was talking about the number that we would have to put in here, and it would be around $50,000. That's a huge chunk of our non-lapsing account. I know it's looked large during the first 2 years that we've funded it, mainly because of COVID. But we've been using that fund to address things like building maintenance issues. I know that Troy sent over a sort of an itemized list for you of what we've paid for. We've been shoring up some gaps after the conclusion of the school building project. There were just some details that didn't get finished. And so we've been using that account to address that, and then trying to use it to provide things along the capital line so that we don't have to add them into our budget. So some upgrades to our school drama program, curtains, sound shells, instruments, some lighting at the elementary school for their stage, to finish the playground that the town had so generously funded. There were still some gaps there, so we've used it to sort of fund that. So we've extended ourselves pretty far, and we're not being funded in that account at the rate that we were. So if we were to move forward, and I do anticipate that we are with this field project, it will take us years. This particular grant will allow us to have a huge impact and really address it all at once. So it'll be, I think, less of a disruption to athletics, and it will give our community something to really be proud of. I mean, the fields are a big deal. And every resident that has kids or will have kids, those kids will play on those fields. So it really will have a huge impact. And this grant will have a huge impact on our ability to do that. So I hope that you'll consider funding it at close to that number. I realize that the town has a lot of needs. I just feel like this fits so well within what the STEEP grant's supposed to be used for: quality of life, recreation. And I would love to see the town support the school in sort of a partnership way as we look at these bigger, more capital items. So unless you have any questions, I think that's all I have to say about it.
So if we talked about the 300,000 to do what Nicola mentioned, the two items that she put at the top, HVAC and a roof, that leaves about $200,000 to use for other things. Are you saying that you're looking for $200,000?
I don't want to quote the number because I feel dreadfully unprepared, but I believe that our initial ask to you 2 weeks ago was 230.
But if it may not be 230, and I think that you did say, or Christine said, they would take even a portion.
Of course. But I think that was the total number that we were looking for.
You also have to pay 20%.
Yes.
Okay, the 20% match. Just like the parking lot you just did, it was 100 and some odd thousand match, correct? How much was the match on that? Was it 20,000? No. So, well, if the parking lot costs around a little over 100,000, you get 20 or 25,000 kind of coming out of non-lapsing now for that project. That just got semi-completed.
I think that I thought our number was closer to 40,000 because I thought that the parking lot was a little over 100,000, but that again was such a surprise and such a wonderful thing for us to be able to do and to give to the taxpayers at such a fraction of the cost. We were moving forward with that project no matter what, but it freed up money for us to do other things.
Don't you think that I thought that the non-lapsing was going to be putting in the maximum 2% in this year's, once we get everything reconciled, weren't you planning on putting 2% back into non-lapsing, which is?
It looks to be preliminarily, based on the report that we got, about $30,000.
30,000 going into non-lapsing?
Yeah, that's it.
I thought it was 2% of their budget.
We could put in up to 2%, but that wasn't the money that was left.
Well, the last I had heard, and this is prior to reconciliation, that you were putting in, I thought 200,000, and the town was getting 83,000 given back to the town in a give back. But that was numbers.
Are you talking about last year or this current year that we just completed?
It was. So, all right, so you don't have numbers yet on what's going in.
Yes, we saw preliminary numbers at our last Board of Ed meeting that hovered around $30,000.
Do you know what your total is in non-lapsing now?
I really don't, Bob, without pulling up those numbers, but I know that after all of the other spending that we've done to try and address these other issues that I talked about and really provide back to the school and to the town all the things that their money should be going towards, we don't have enough money to take $230,000 and do this project. And so we'd have to piecemeal it. And so this, like I said, provides an opportunity for us to do it all at once and be able to put in $50,000 and still continue to do those other improvements in the school that need to be done.
So that the fields can be done in some sort of a phasing process, right? We could do some fields, but not all fields.
They'll have to be done in a phasing process no matter what because of the athletic schedule. And so our field study, which I hope you guys have a copy of, but our field study sort of rolled out how that would be possible. We're ready when, hopefully if we get an approval to put out the RFP to hear.
All right, so thank you, Steph. So how do you want to handle it, Nicole and Brett?
Can I ask one quick question? I know that we've talked about the painting of the old town hall. it's looking pretty bad. Is that anything that can be thrown in or?
We
not?
have
Not
money
at
in the
this point?
budget, some money in the budget for town maintenance, don't we? I thought we put an extra, 25,000 in last year for that.
No, we didn't put anything in capital for painting town hall this year.
How much money's in that account? Money left over from last year when we didn't paint it? That was a 17 or 18,000 was in then?
I don't have those numbers with me.
Okay.
But we don't have a quote
We
on
don't have
that,
a quote
so I'm
to-
not
yeah.
comfortable including that as,
Okay.
But you don't think we can get a quote by Friday? Paint? I know we went up to like 4 days before last week. I just think sometimes we have to push to get things done if we want to see the results. And when we're in a time crunch, it's,
But the thing is, it's how fast can the grant writer get it done if we give it to him on Friday, which is the 11th? Then it has to be in by the 18th, so it doesn't give him a heck of a lot of time to write the grants, right?
yeah, but it's one small.
we're giving him the weekend to write the grant because he needs to get it to us so that we can review it and get it back and everything. I don't know anything with painting that building. I don't know the environmental hazards with it. I don't know if it needs to be scraped. I don't know if there's lead paint. Okay.
But it might be worth a shot to see if we can get something. It's
Well,
not-
I mean, I think that, again, if we go back to must-haves and nice-to-haves, I really want to go back to the priorities and the things that are costing us money right now. I am 100% in favor of our schools and bettering our schools. And I know that there have been issues on those fields in the past. And we are under the gun. I understand that as far as trying to come up with projects that are shovel ready.
But we don't want to leave money on the table either.
No.
So if we
Right.
can, if we can spend 500,000, I know last time we went in for about 400, Preston got the full 5 because they had the projects. We shouldn't leave money on the table if we can get it.
Yeah.
And there are times to get real, I mean, you get your bids and everything after we know we're getting it. So right now, if we did the roof and HVAC, we're at 250,
Call it that.
260.
Yeah.
And then, so in that, the Board of Ed request for the fields, that was just the sprinkler or the irrigation.
the irrigation
back.
just the
Or it's not
irrigation.
the other processing, correct?
All they sent was the 230, which was the irrigation.
If that's what you want to do, if you want to get the finalized quotes on HVAC and the roof, which we have the roof, and and whatever money's left over up to, but not exceeding 500,000 for the fields, I could work with that.
I'd be on board with
Oh,
that.
that's fine.
The only caveat I would throw in is there a way to look at the other parts of this building by Friday? And what I mean is more like I talked about the peeling paint, the stuff. What can we do to kind of button up this building with some of these funds? So we know when we walk in this building, we talked about that whole area where they put the support beams and all that stuff that hasn't been painted in the outside.
But
Is
is
there
that maintenance that we can do through our regular budget without going through steep grants? And
Well, I agree, but if we can get, if it's $20,000 or $30,000 and we can get it through steep, because if there's a little, I'm just saying if there's extra room, say the HVAC comes in a little lower, is it something we can be working on that maybe Donnie can get or somebody can get quotes on of what that would be roughly, and then you have it in your back pocket. I don't know.
Donnie, if we were gonna do painting, I know we were talking about the outside of the building. If we were gonna do painting, like with the paints peeling and the beams that in the main hallway, is that something we would just do in-house or would you contract that out?
We have done stuff in-house, we did the rec building. It depends on, again, man hours. So, we did get paint to do the pillars outside. and that's
Yeah,
quite a
I mean,
small job.
I think if we're talking curb appeal, the building's looking a little rough
Right, I
outside.
agree 100.
I think that we focus on the outside for,
We're a highway department, but we're really not painters.
yeah.
I'll take that
No.
chance, I'll be.
But I'm just wondering if we can get, I mean, if we can't get a quote, we can't get one, but is it worth trying to see?
We had a
how
quote
much
on
that
the,
would be?
town hall. at one
Yeah,
point,
I
right?
thought it was 21,000.
21,000,
I still have the quote, but that was over a year ago.
Yeah. Now it's stripping it right down to I think the problem was there was no primer put on there correctly. I think that was the biggest problem with that.
So anything you add to the HVAC and the roof, anything you add is gonna be money taken away from the fields, correct?
Right. I'm just saying, what if
Yeah.
the HVAC comes in at 40,000? I'm just saying you have a little buffer of another,
What if
something
it,
to
what
put
if it
in,
comes in at 80,000?
then that's
Yeah.
where we are.
So,
Do we get to keep it if we come in under? No, okay.
No, so, you pay the bills, the state reimburses you up to the amount that,
And we can't adjust our 20%.
no.
Because you don't need 20%, you're just more likely to get stuff. I just worry, like, when you look around here and you see like the electrical hanging out of the
Yeah,
wall.
no, I mean, there's
and
no,
we're not
there's no
coming up with-
doubt. I just, at this late, for me, I would go with the HVAC, the roof and the fields.
Okay.
And we have all of those other things in our back pocket for later,
Right. Can,
not for the steep grant, you know. what I mean?
but can you maybe look at Nicole's idea regarding the painting of town hall? Maybe check with whoever gave that quote, see if they just up it a little bit or whatever they need to
we can do that. We can.
and then know where we
if
stand.
Come in with a number to give to Steep, we can then go out and get RFPs and
Right, after
finalize
the fact.
numbers.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll make a motion to move forward with steep funding for the roof at 298. And I should just clarify, that's for
Just a two-story line.
just the 2-story. Okay, 298. And the HVAC systems for this,
For this room and the central office,
and
painting of town hall.
painting of town hall, if we can get
I
that.
have the quote. You can just up it maybe.
And,
We'll leave that as an optional addition to the steep
And then whatever's left over
and
towards
the
the fields.
irrigation for
and the irrigation for
fields.
the school.
Can I put the
I'll
numbers
second
together?
that.
All right. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. At least that gives us direction.
You also need to do a second vote to opt into the steep grant.
So, because when we talked about if you go into the steep grant, it may make you ineligible for distressed community grants.
Yeah.
And we talked about what does that mean? So I got an opinion from both, Amy Kennedy, from Amanda Kennedy rather, from, COG and from Greg Howard. And they both agree, go for steep because you don't know what is out there for distressed communities. And Greg even said that even though we're on the list, people don't believe we should be on the list, and they would hold us against it. If it came between us and let's say Griswold or us and New London or us and Norwich, we're not gonna get the nod. So he said, go for the money you know you can get. And now I talked to the first selectwoman of Allentown, and she said hasn't been on the distressed community for 2 years, but she still puts it on there that she was on it and they still consider it. So that was it. So we have to then vote to opt in to using a steep grant.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
okay. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we're done with steep, right? India transfers. There was some in your packet. I think we're done with Alan and Donnie now? Okay, you guys don't have to hang around any longer if you don't want. I know he does. It's
Okay, do
amazing.
you want me to do the transfers?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so we have 3 end of year transfers, B 6.00 salary tax collector, which we're going to take from B 1.14 grant writer, $3,684.06, which is needed to cover changing the position from a part-time to a full-time. Then we have B 27.17 transfer station wages, which we're transferring from B 27.08 public works labor and wages for $3,386.16. And that's for transfer station staff coverage. So just people from the highway we're covering at the transfer station. It comes out of the transfer station account instead of the highway account, which is why we're transferring it from the regular highway line to the transfer station line. So anytime someone's sick at the transfer station or on vacation, we're having a regular highway person cover those hours and it comes out of that budget. And then the last one is B 30.01 tax refunds prior year. We're taking that from B 26.04 state troopers for $16,242.27. We always have to fund this line at $1 because you're not supposed to anticipate prior year tax refunds. So we always have to do a transfer for that. And that's how much it is this year. Question. These are all transfers. Nothing is an additional appropriation added onto the budget.
Make a motion to transfer as stated.
I'll second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So that will go in front of the Board of Finance also, correct?
What was that date again?
It's a week from tomorrow.
16.
Thank you.
Okay. Capital plan discussion. Did you get a chance to think about what you'd like to do as far as the capital plan? I know we discussed last time and we did get some input, but I was comfortable with the $10,000 minimum or more, 5 years, life or more. So $10,000 in 5 years. You'd like to discuss
I'm
something else?
comfortable with that as well.
I am as well. And not because it's after 9 o'clock at night.
No, but
No, those were my, 5 is what I'm used to in my work life, but I think that 10 makes a lot of sense for our town purposes.
And are we adopting that definition that was stated at the last meeting?
the definition that came from from one of the emails that you sent.
Handbook for Connecticut
Right.
Boards of Finance. So it's a capital improvement is a major non-recurring improvement in the physical plant of a municipality as differentiated from the ordinary repairs or maintenance of a recurring nature. A long-range capital improvement program becomes more meaningful when it's reduced to a 5-year capital budget. So we can just add the stipulation of, in the amount of $10,000 or more lasting 5 years or more.
I'll make a motion to adopt that as our policy for the definition.
I will second that myself.
I
How
will,
about that?
you're gonna second
I am.
yourself?
Yeah.
I will third.
Because I'm just excited that we've got it done quick.
Does this still have to go to Board of Finance for their approval or not?
I think we have we can make the decision on what we would consider capital, but we can look for them for an opinion, I imagine, but I think we're gonna talk about it at the tribal meeting in September.
Okay.
So we need to vote.
Vote.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, so looking at the sheet for me to send to people, I did send out the ask, I think you guys were copied for 5, 10, and 20-year extended plans from anyone who has them.
And
Yeah,
I wanted to clarify that you sent that out so people start prepping.
Yes.
Correct? Because I want that on public. I had people ask and they were like, well, do we wait until we find, I'm like, no, it's so you can start talking. And one of the things I said was Christine and I have always had this debate over budget time frame and stuff like that, because boards and commissions need to meet and actually vote on these things. They can't just, the chair can't just say, hey, this is our capital. They need to vote. And I think by Christine sending this out saying, hey, this be on the lookout with the policy developing, it gets them the chance to have their information ready to go. So
and I think the questions make sense.
I agree.
This is the sheet we're looking at. Nicole.
Yes, yep, so we're looking at the request form that was used last year. At the last meeting, Nicole added, can you not complete your current operations without this item as a question being added? So we're gonna add that. And then we need to figure out a way to triage the need for the item. So does that question take care of that, or do we need to add another question of how badly do you need
Well,
this?
I like Nicole's idea of them listing their priorities too. So if they have multiple requests, they should list them in order of,
Priority.
yeah.
Yep.
One
Highest
thing that on these questions, underneath where it says, will the town be selling the item if replaced? If it's a yes, I'd say estimated value on there, so we can have a handle on that too. And I know some people might not be able to do that, but I think the highway department is one that can do it.
Thank you. Yeah, I like it.
All right, so I will revise this. Do you want to?
Do we want a
review it?
deadline?
Well, do you want to review it at the meeting on the 22nd, or are you good with me sending it out?
I'm
No,
good
I'm
with you
I'm
sending
good
it
with
out.
sending it out.
With just how we discussed it.
Yes, there should be a deadline. What would you like the deadline to be?
What, based on our whole budget timeline, what would you suggest?
So I would suggest that this be due by the end of September at the latest.
I was gonna say October 1st.
Because that gives you guys a couple months to look at it.
Yep.
And hopefully at that point, you'll have some direction from the Board of Finance at that September tri-board meeting of $700,000.
Yeah.
$1 million.
Yeah.
Who knows?
And I think that gives
Yeah.
the boards and commissions time to meet and also get out of the summer craziness.
That sounds good.
Okay, can we move? Number 12, farmer's market location change. Brett brought this up at the last meeting. I've got no issues with the moving. As a matter of fact, I thought it was a good idea to begin with, but I think that as much as how nice we all think Hewitt Farmers it is, I think that you don't get the drop-in traffic that you could, and I'd be more than willing to give the farmer's market a couple of sandwich board signs to put out there, something that says farmer's market, free admission or something. So if someone's driving down Route 2, they can just pop in and say, hey, is this not gonna cost us a penny unless they buy something? But
Yeah, I'm fine. I wish that our grass had come in a little bit better than our field of weeds, but it's gonna, something's gonna happen.
think it
with
also
in the
gives-
future anyway, but, yeah, no, I'm totally in favor.
I think it also gives us a chance to visualize what that space looks like.
Could
with
be used
people
for it, yep.
utilizing it. and
Yep.
Doing things.
all right, so can they just change it? We don't have to vote on that, do we? Can they just change it? Or do we have to vote? All right,
I'll make a motion to approve moving the North Stonington or the North Stonington Artisan Farmers Market from Hewitt to the 298 empty lot.
demolition site, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the September date?
Hold on.
So we starting in September, whatever the date is? That was-
August
It
date.
could start with the August. date,
Yeah,
but
we're
I wanna
looking
know what
at
the Sep- what
August.
The September date is, just thinking about other things that are happening in September. In this building.
Somebody needs to second my motion while Brett's looking.
I thought
up.
Bob did.
I second your motion.
Okay, cool.
Can we vote without while he's looking?
Yes.
One has nothing to do with
It
the
does
other,
not
right?
impact the vote,
All right,
yes. you
all
may
those
vote.
in favor of moving the farmer's market location from Hewitt Farm to 298, say aye.
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 August 20th. And then September 17th and October 15th.
September 17th. The parking lot will be cleaned up after HHW.
What's the date of that? The
September
17th?
16th.
What's HH?
No, it's the 17th, isn't it?
HHW is on the Saturday, the farmer's market. on the
Oh,
Sunday.
you're right.
HHW is shredding day and hazardous household waste.
Oh, but they're up front.
They're in this parking lot.
We'll be okay.
You would think that they would clean.
You wouldn't hope the shredders leave the material.
So let's
Oh.
just be mindful of that as we're setting up.
We'll make it work.
Okay. Good point. though.
Throw a tarp over the.
Okay, on old business demolition, 1-story, 298 Norwich Wesley Road. I copied you on all emails that have transpired over the last week or two. I've got nothing else to report, with the exception of the letter that I sent to Bestech was certified mail and they received it. Okay. Any questions at that point? No? Okay. Speed hump update. So the last time we spoke at the last meeting, we just talked about maybe doing a walk in the village sometime to see where we would best locate another hump or two. And the only thing we have to do now is decide when that would be good to do. We can call it a Board of Selectmen meeting with one item on it and meet at town hall someday and just walk down Rocky Hollow and see what we think. So can be on at the end of the day, some early evening. It can be on a Saturday. It doesn't matter to me, whatever works best for you guys.
When are we looking? Can we do it like after Labor Day or are you looking to do it?
Oh, we
before?
can do it after Labor Day.
I'm just thinking for Nicole, it'll be cooler.
I did trudge through the woods, at 100% humidity. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter to me one way or another. We can do it one Saturday morning or after work is fine.
But can we do it like, prior to one of our meetings? Oh, no, you have a hard time getting here, right?
If you give me the date, I could see.
Because it shouldn't take more than 1.5 hours.
No more than that. It'll give you a free,
Yeah.
free meeting. We'll just make it the same meeting, just make a special meeting from 6 to
Yeah,
6.
Right,
right.
I
That's
think
a good
that'd be great
idea.
Compared to,
So is our next one the 20? Why don't you wait till September 12th? September 12th? Sure. It will be maybe, it might be cooler. I'm good with that.
September 12th? Yes, why don't we do that? September 12th, be a special meeting from 6 to 6:30. We can meet at the parking lot of Town Hall at,
Sounds
5:45, call the meeting and adjourn, to order, walk. And then head over here after that. It's only take us 15 or 20 minutes to walk.
perfect.
Good idea, Brett.
You don't have any tax refunds?
No, we had the big line item adjustment instead.
Make a motion to, approve minutes from July 25th, 2023 as presented.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any approved? Do we have any public comment either in person or online? Brian? Anything online? Any hands up online? Okay, go ahead.
I was just wondering, I should ask, when you had the empowerment lot location redone, is that run by the town?
Nope.
Did
Nope.
you ever check, see if another place, maybe like range or something?
Well, the only reason I think they want to move it to this is because of traffic on Route 2. They had it at Hewitt Farm all of last year and the beginning of this year, and you can't see it from Route 2, so you don't know what's going on. So they're trying to, businesses dropped off. So they're trying to get the people who drop in, they'll see the tents, they'll see the colors, they'll see the sign that says,
Like they do a,
excuse me?
see it
Yeah,
being wrecked.
or the one in Voluntown
I'm
on the
just
field. Yeah.
wondering.
I think it's just to have, I mean, if you're driving by and it's a nice day and it's a free event, it's always good to come in and stop by. But I think Grange, it would be a nice site, but we don't have the kind of traffic on Wyosset Road that we have on Route 2, obviously.
Always thought anything like that. People.
Well, if you
That's okay.
advertise it enough, but we might be able to get some of those out of town dollars that are just going to the casino dropped into our coffers at our local small businesses, which would be nice.
Just wondering.
It doesn't mean down the road, Brian, if it gets a big following, that it can't be moved again, but almost like you have to build it up. Say that again?
Yeah, it
Oh, well,
won't-
that's
if
gonna
I
have to
can-
get, it's gonna have to get churned up eventually.
But I can
anyway.
tell you, they're very careful. So after they leave Hewitt, the vendors, you don't even notice they were there.
Stephanie, you have comment?
I do. I just wanted to thank you guys so much for letting me speak on behalf of the project tonight and for voting to support it. I know it means so, so, so much to the board and ultimately it will to the school. So thank you.
You're welcome. Next meeting is August 22nd, 2023. And a motion for adjournment.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, so the meeting will be adjourned